Chapter 934. Old Jack, three-legged, golden-toothed rat, John Jr., old drunkard, and Mrs. Mendez were the 6 most outstanding rangers in the Rattlesnake mercenary camp. They had all trained in battle energy. Even though they were only at the beginner level, they were veterans in the forest. They might not be able to defeat beginner World of Warcraft, but they could rely on various disguises to roam freely in the forest. They mainly relied on gathering information and exchanging information for payment. Sir, they have almost all the information in the camp. Many rangers are their subordinates, the camp manager said. Dismiss the others. Don't stand around and get in the way. Of course. I'll have the mercenaries leave now. After driving away the crowd of onlookers, List did not beat around the bush and directly stated his purpose. I need you to provide me with some information. As long as the importance of the information is recognized by me, gold coins are not a problem. But if you provide me with false information, you will be killed by my big bear and second bear. Three-legged had a sneaky look. He smiled and said, Sir, may I have the honor of knowing your name? Meh. List felt that it was better to have a flashy identity in order to deal with these veterans among the rangers. Mario Red White Rose. Ah. Not only the rangers but even the camp manager was in awe. So it's Sir Mario of the Red White Rose family. Sir Mario, ask away. Old Jack will definitely tell you everything he knows. I pay my respects to the Red White Rose family. Three-legged is willing to give you all the information he knows. Mendez is also willing to give you all the information he knows. The 6 rangers rushed to express their respect and offered to give him the information for free. Looking at their eyes and expressions, they were not forcing themselves. They were sincerely willing to do so. It could be seen that the Red White Rose family had a respectable status in the Steel Ridge Kingdom. Of course, this was also because List was very young and rode an earth burly bear. Others thought that even if he was not the direct heir of the Red White Rose family, he was still a very important junior. Otherwise, he would not be able to enjoy a mount like the earth burly bear. After learning of List's identity as Mario Red White Rose, the 6 rangers told him everything they knew and gave him all the information they knew. It was mainly about the Pegasus and unicorns. Pegasi were advanced dragons that lived in groups in the Pegasi forest. They were adept at wind magic. Even though it wasn't a powerful dragon beast, it was still comparable to a sword saint. When a group of sword saints gathered together, one could imagine the difficulty of taming and capturing them. That was why many great nobles had sent orders of chivalry to the Pegasus forest. However, the number of times they had actually captured a lone Pegasus could be counted on one hand. Even the royal family had sent a group of knights, but to no avail. They could not find a group of Pegasi. As for eyewitnesses who had seen unicorns among the Pegasi herd, there was indeed such a rumor, but it had not been verified. Sir Mario, there was indeed a knight who saw a unicorn. However, unicorns are agile. When a knight glanced at a unicorn from afar, it would notice and flee. The Pegasi herd would also flee. That's why no one has ever seen a unicorn up close, and they don't even know if they saw a unicorn. There were too many things to hide in the forest and it was a long distance. Even a Sky Knight couldn't guarantee that what he saw was a so-called unicorn. That was why, before there was any concrete evidence, unicorns were still a magical creature that only existed in the legends. However, List believed in the existence of unicorns. In the World of Warcraft Encyclopedia, compiled by Achi, the official name of unicorns was tentatively Storm Draconic Horse. Similar to the Lightning Draconic Turtle among the Dragon Turtles, the Super Dragon among the Pegasi herd should be called Storm Draconic Horse. Moreover, List also remembered that when Kenly Truth had provided him with clues about unicorns, she had mentioned an official record between the Platinum family of the Iron Ridge royal family and the ruler of the Grand Duchy of Rose, the Red and White Rose family, which was related to unicorns. The Red and White Rose family and the Platinum family often had marriage alliances. There was a generation of Grand Duke Rose who was going to marry his daughter to the mentally retarded youngest son of the king 2 generations ago. As a result, the Grand Duke's daughter was rescued by a unicorn halfway and wandered into the forest. This matter was acknowledged by the king and the Grand Duke. Of course, List believed that this was a dirty matter between the 2 dragon-raising families. It was possible that the Grand Duke's daughter had eloped with someone, so they used the name of the unicorn to beautify it. Otherwise, how could a storm dragon horse like the unicorn, which was on the same level as the flame dragon bird and the lightning dragon tortoise, be so intelligent and so miraculous that it could ignore the powerful guards of the palace and save a young lady from the knights? His thoughts returned to the thick bast paper that the ranger had handed over. List looked at the slightly abstract map and asked, So, The places where the unicorns have been seen are the places marked with red ink? Yes, Lord Mario. The places marked with green ink are the places where the Pegasi herd appears, and the places marked with purple ink are the places where the Pegasi have been caught. Yes. List flipped to the back of the thick bast paper. The food that the Pegasi like to eat, their resting habits, and some of the behaviors of the herd are all recorded here? Yes. Nodding, List put away the thick bast paper and took out 60 gold coins, handing them to the person in charge of the camp. You take a cut and let the 6 of them split the rest equally. I will be taking this information and map. Lord Mario, we are all volunteering to give you this information. Do as I say. List did not care about this bit of gold coins. On the contrary, he took out another 100 gold coins. If I cannot find the Pegasi herd, I will come back. You can use these gold coins to help me find new information. As long as it is of help to me, I will give you more rewards. He jumped onto the back of the earth burly bear and shook the cloak that covered his armor. He said in a clear voice, "Remember, the red and white rose family has money." Achi smiled secretly. Briar and Bramble started to turn around. List added with a sense of immersion, "Don't save money for me." His voice was powerful and resonant. As the 2 earth burly bears left, it echoed in the ears of the person in charge of the camp and the ranger. They looked at the tall and straight figure that was getting further and further away. A ranger could not help but sigh. As expected of the red and white rose family. Yes, Lord Mario's elegance is as dazzling as the morning sun. If you can follow behind Lord Mario, you will definitely be bathed in the glory of a night. You will have endless gold coins to spend. List could not hear the flattery of the rangers. However, he was in a good mood. Sure enough, the feeling of throwing money at people makes me feel good all over. Why didn't I transmigrate to the red and white rose family? With the wealth of the red and white rose family and my personal talent, I should have unified the 3 kingdoms long ago. Chapter 935. Hoeing rice at noon, sweat dripping on the soil. Who knew that every grain on the plate was hard work? 160 gold coins were enough for a free family to live for a lifetime. Even with List's standard of living, it was enough for 3 to 5 breakfasts. So he secretly warned himself to be thrifty when it was time to be thrifty, and not to waste precious gold coins in unnecessary show-off. After all, he did not announce his real name, and no one would know his true strength after showing off. I will personally make the red and white rose family famous, as a favor to Mashu for the gifts. List waved his hand, dispersing these messy and boring thoughts. When Big Bear and Bramble entered the dense forest, he signaled Achi, "Give them 2 space magic beacons. We will change to Bard, this way we can move faster. We don't have much time to waste here." Yes. Achi waved her hand, and 2 space magic beacons were engraved on the fur of the earth burly bear. List touched the head of Big Bear, threw a piece of steak into its mouth and said, "You 2 live freely in the forest. I will come back to find you when I need you." The earth burly bear was too slow and made too much noise, so it was not suitable to find the Pegasus herd. When List and Achi left with the invisible dragon, the 2 earth burly bears were still dizzy and did not know what had happened. But when the invisible dragon's aura was completely gone, the 2 bears looked at each other and glared fiercely at each other, as if they were about to fight again after losing List's suppression. But soon the 2 gave up staring, each chose a direction and ran wildly. Life was precious, but love was even more valuable. For the sake of freedom, both could be abandoned. At this time, the dawn of freedom had appeared, and they did not want to continue to be ridden on their heads by humans who were like ants. Riding the invisible dragon, the speed of the search was greatly increased. The 2 humans and 3 dragons that had escaped into the material boundary spent almost 10 minutes searching for a green dot that indicated the presence of a group of Pegasi, half an hour searching for a purple dot that captured a Pegasus, and 3 hours searching for a red dot that indicated the sighting of a unicorn. The crystal white tracks had a radar-level magic power discrimination effect. On the afternoon of the 2nd day, he finally discovered a large amount of greenish-gray magic light at a green punctuation point, outlining many winged horses. The light of the wind mana retroaction was mostly of different shades of green. Coupled with the fact that the horses had wings on their backs, there was no doubt that the horses stationed around the river below were a group of Pegasi. List didn't ask Bard to appear immediately. Instead, he carefully examined every ray of mana retroaction among the Pegasi herd. The greenish-gray rays varied in strength, but he didn't find any higher-level magic power. They were all low-level devils. In other words, there was no storm dragon horse among the group of Pegasi. No? Looks like I haven't found a real Pegasus herd yet. There are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 26 Pegasus. It's probably a small herd or a small group from a large herd. List quickly left the crystal trail and looked around with his naked eyes. Through the gaps between the trees, he could barely make out the true appearance of the Pegasus. Unlike the pictures and descriptions provided by the ranger, these Pegasi were similar to normal horses. However, its front legs and shoulder blades were slightly stronger, and a pair of wings grew out from the shoulder blades. Since they weren't flying, these wings were retracted to their sides. The color wasn't silver as described. Instead, it was mainly silver with some light gray patterns and light blue patterns on the wings. The horse's mane and tail looked very elegant and smooth, as if they had been washed with floaty softness. Based on the naked eye, these Pegasi weren't much bigger than normal horses. In fact, the largest among them wasn't even as big as List's own mount, the king of black-blooded horses, Lightning. Lightning was 4 meters tall, and these Pegasi were at most 3 to 5 meters tall. However, they were high-level dragons. They emitted a faint draconic aura. The thick greenish-gray wind attribute magic power could probably cut Lightning into pieces with a casual wave of a wind blade. Brother, we can follow this Pegasus herd. Achi found no female Pegasus or foals among them. This shouldn't be a single herd. We should be able to find a larger Pegasus herd if we follow them, Achi reminded. I understand. List had the same idea. So he quietly hid at the material boundary, waiting for the Pegasus herd to move. At the same time, he summoned the smoke mission, wanting to see the progress of the smoke mission. However, to his surprise, the mission was actually completed. Mission completed. Reward, Pegasus herd. That's easy, but how do I take this group of Pegasi away? Such a thought flashed in List's mind, and he was soon attracted by the new mission. Mission, the Pegasus herd in front of you is exciting, but the traces of the unicorns have never been revealed. However, for you who have magic eyes, you are very good at spying on creatures hiding in the dark. Please find a Pegasus with a horn. Reward, a Pegasus with a horn. Well, I still have to continue looking for unicorns. I'll follow the original plan and follow this group of Pegasus to the large herd. Although the plan was good, the process wasn't wonderful. After following the Pegasus herd for a whole day and night, this group of Pegasus had no intention of joining the large herd. Could it be that these male Pegasus are a group of frustrated single dogs that only return to the large herd to fight for a mate during mating season? Thinking of this, he quickly made a decision and said to Achi, I'm afraid these Pegasus won't return to the large herd in a short time. Achi, why don't we put a spatial magic beacon on them first, and we'll continue to look for other Pegasus herds? Okay. With Achi taking action, they quietly approached the Pegasus herd from the material boundary, put a dozen spatial magic beacons in a row, and then left. They continued to look for the Pegasus herds on the map one by one. After searching for half a day, they found another small Pegasus herd, with only 17 adult male Pegasus. Just as List was about to let Achi put a spatial magic beacon on the map and continue looking for new Pegasus herds, one of the Pegasus suddenly raised its head and neighed. Then all the Pegasus in the small herd raised their heads and neighed. They quickly gathered and stared at the dense forest in front of them. It was a light yellow monster quietly approaching the Pegasus herd. That's. List was momentarily attracted by the appearance of the intruder. It was a big cat with a special body structure as large as an elephant. Its face and mane were similar to that of a lion, but its claws were like eagle claws, its body was covered with hard hair like a hedgehog, a pair of bat-like wings, and a poisonous stinger like a scorpion's tail. Achi quickly guessed the identity of the intruder. It's a manticore, big brother. It's a dark element super warcraft, and its tail is extremely poisonous. Touch it and you'll die. A manticore, huh? List nodded, not intervening in the process of the manticore hunting the Pegasus. According to the ranking system, high-level dragons were more precious than super warcraft. However, from the nervousness and restlessness of the Pegasus herd when facing the manticore, it could be seen that the manticore seemed to feed on the Pegasus. It could be seen that the ranking system of World of Warcraft did not represent the actual combat power. Big brother, do you want to help the Pegasus? They're all Big Brother's personal property, Achi asked. The little siren was deeply influenced by List as she grew up. She already believed in one principle: anything that her big brother liked was her big brother's personal property. Now that List liked the Pegasus herd, the Pegasus naturally belonged to List. Chapter 936. Facing the Manticore's relentless advance, the 17 Pegasi raised their heads and neighed, even rousing their magic power to attack first. However, the Manticore was not in a hurry to attack. It only approached slowly, giving the Pegasi a strong sense of oppression, forcing them into a state of confusion. It was good to win in the chaos and get the prey they wanted. However, the Pegasi were not stupid. They did not disperse but stayed together to deal with the manticore together. This confrontation lasted for 2 whole hours. Finally, in a test of willpower and patience, the manticore won. Some Pegasi in the Pegasi herd could not bear it anymore, turned around and ran away. One Pegasi ran away, and in an instant all the Pegasi started to run away. With a whoosh, the entire Pegasi herd flapped their wings and flew above the forest. The manticore's eyes, which seemed to be filled with hatred, flashed with lightning. It also flapped the huge bat wings on its back and quickly chased after a Pegasi. "Come, Bard, let's follow them." "Wuxia." The invisible dragon responded softly. Its body seemed to teleport, easily following behind the Pegasi and the manticore. List said to Ichi, "When the manticore is about to pounce on the Pegasi, interrupt it. Don't let it easily catch the Pegasi, or the Pegasi may not run towards the herd." The Pegasi was a high-level dragon beast with a high IQ. When in danger, it was very likely that it would ask for help from its own kind. However, if the Pegasi could not hold on to the herd, List's plan would naturally fall behind, so he had to control the balance. Let the Pegasi have a chance to escape and ask for help, and let the manticore have a chance to catch prey. He only needed to interrupt the rhythm at the crucial moment. The flying Pegasi was graceful, streams of air rising under its beautiful wings. Like a noble white swan, it found a direction and quickly fled. The manticore's flying posture was not so graceful. Its bat wings flapped repeatedly like a sparrow jumping up and down, but its speed was slightly faster than the Pegasi. This was also why it dared to catch the Pegasi. However, whenever it was about to catch up to the Pegasi in front, it would always find that the Pegasi suddenly burst forth with speed, leaving it a distance behind. This made it angry. It had captured Pegasi several times when it was growing up, and it coveted the smell of Pegasi. It knew very well that these Pegasi were no match for it when it came to escaping. However, it didn't expect the Pegasus in front of it to always have a burst of speed, causing its attacks to miss. However, in the end, the Pegasus didn't have enough explosive power. It only managed to pull away a little before it slowed down again. Seeing this situation, the manticore couldn't hold it in any longer. It flapped its wings with all its might and charged towards the Pegasus. It had no intention of giving up the delicacy that was already in its mouth. Just like that, they flew for dozens of miles. Although the group of Pegasi fled in panic, their formation did not disperse. They were still hurriedly flying in one direction. The manticore was out of breath. It was huge and not good at long-distance flying, but its prey was right next to its mouth. It was unwilling to give up, so it could only sprint. One more time, and I'll definitely bite it to death." This was probably the true portrayal of its inner thoughts. Unfortunately, the big hands of fate were in the hands of Ichi, who was in the material boundary, or rather, in the hands of List. He could always rely on the power of magic to push the Pegasus at the critical moment. He didn't push too much, just let the Pegasus just happen to avoid the manticore's bite. But fate was also unpredictable. Just when List felt that this plan was very good and victory was in sight, the manticore, which had experienced another failed attack, actually chose to give up. It looked deeply at the Pegasus group flying further and further away with its venomous eyes, and landed below while panting heavily. It finally accepted the cruel reality and announced that its hunt had failed. "You actually gave up the fat meat that was right next to your mouth, and you actually chose to give up trash." List was furious. First, he let Ichi put a spatial magic beacon on the Pegasus group, and then directly rode the invisible dragon to kill the manticore that was hiding in the forest to rest. Taking out the dragon spear, Thunder Fury, he directly used the dragon fighting technique, Toxic Dragon Drill. The dragon spear stretched out from the material boundary like a drill, and with lightning speed, it pierced into the manticore, who was so tired that it was seeing stars. The powerful power of the Dragon Knight poured in. The manticore didn't have any reaction and was stabbed to death. Looking at the manticore that was killed with one shot, List quickly organized the space rings, freed one of them, and stuffed the huge manticore into the gem space. The space ring had a diameter of 5 meters, which could barely fit the manticore. After doing all this, there was no hesitation. Following the response of the spatial magic beacon, he quickly chased the Pegasus group. He wanted to see if the Pegasus group would continue to seek refuge in the large group after being frightened, and it was this idea that allowed him to reap rich results. The Pegasus group continued to fly, crossing a distance of hundreds of kilometers with good endurance before lightly landing in a valley surrounded by mountains. In the vision of the crystal white orbit, there was a flat land with sparse trees but exuberant weeds in the valley, on which hundreds of leisurely Pegasus were scattered. Green-gray mana retroaction lights rose and fell, among which there were 3 special green lights, which were a kind of emerald color. And on the top of the Pegasus's head, there was a sharp horn slightly longer than the horse's head. Storm Dragon Horse. List felt relieved. Hard work paid off. Although his plan to have the Manticore chase the Pegasus had failed midway, he still achieved the final result he wanted. He found a Pegasus with a single horn on its head, which was also known as a unicorn, the Storm Dragon Horse. And 3 Storm Dragon Horses at once. Restraining his excitement, he did not go down to capture them. Instead, he remained at the material boundary, observing the Pegasus group and the 3 Storm Dragon Horses. A vague doubt arose in his mind. The Storm Dragon Horse is indeed a unicorn, and it is extraordinary in itself. The magic power of the horn on its head is definitely at a high magic level. But this mission is to help Achi find a mount. With Achi's identity as a high mage, is she going to ride this kind of Storm Dragon Horse? It wasn't that he looked down on the Storm Dragon Horse, but that it really wasn't worthy of Achi. After all, the invisible dragon bard had wanted Achi to ride it. But Achi had rejected it. How could the Storm Dragon Horse be Achi's mount? Just as he was pondering, a cloud of smoke appeared out of nowhere and quickly condensed into illusory serpentines. Mission completed. Reward, Storm Dragon Horse. In a flash, the smoke suddenly dispersed and condensed into a new serpentine. Mission. Even if it is a Pegasus with a single horn, it is just an ordinary Pegasus and cannot match Achi's identity as a high mage. However, while feeling dejected, did you notice that the real unicorn is secretly observing you and Achi? Perhaps all you need to do is stay away from Achi. Reward, 1 unicorn. Seeing the first half of the mission, List was pleasantly surprised. Sure enough, the power of fate was a projection of his will. The Storm Dragon Horse was simply not worthy of Achi's identity. But Chapter 937. No matter how angry or wronged he was, he could not change the content of the smoke mission. It was still for him to stay away from Achi and not obstruct the unicorn's approach. Preposterous. After taking 3 deep breaths, he calmed himself down and regained his calmness and composure. He reviewed the content of the smoke mission with a calm mind, but when he looked at the content again, a nameless rage quickly rose in his heart. It was unbearable, this was blatant slander against him. Deep breaths. Deep breaths. He secretly confronted his impatience. In the end, his rationality won over his impulsiveness, and he seriously considered the mission. A Pegasus with a horn is just an ordinary Pegasus. The real unicorn is observing in the dark. Does this mean that the unicorn I saw isn't a real unicorn, or that there's an even stronger unicorn? The reward of the smoke mission was a unicorn. However, there were 3 unicorns at the scene. As long as List was willing to capture them, they would not be able to escape, so they did not meet the reward of the smoke mission. Furthermore, the previous mission had already rewarded him with a Storm Dragon Horse. So, the ordinary hornless horses in the Pegasus herd are high-grade dragon Pegasi, the Pegasus with a horn is a super dragon, the Storm Dragon Horse, and there's an even more mystical, real unicorn hidden in the dark? List could not guess what a real unicorn was, but that did not stop him from putting down his pride. He said to Achi, I have a strong feeling that the unicorns we found are not real unicorns. Real unicorns are probably as mystical as the legends say, full of affection for girls. Achi was puzzled. Brother, are you saying that these 3 Storm Dragon Horses are not unicorns? But they do have a horn? The ones with a horn are only Storm Dragon Horses, which are of a higher grade than Pegasus. However, unicorns are far more mystical than subdragons like phoenixes. They're almost as mystical as dragons. I didn't believe it at first, but I felt a mystical gaze staring at us. Are the real unicorns nearby? Achi did not understand but found it amazing. List nodded. That's what I guessed. That's why I'm going to hide with Bard, and you'll continue to attract the unicorns here. According to the legends, unicorns are very kind and like pure girls. Achi, you fit the bill very well. If it dares to hurt you, protect yourself first. Bard and I will rush forward and kill it. Achi nodded and even clenched her fist. She said confidently, Don't worry, big brother. Achi has already mastered the water element, ice element, and space element incarnation. She's also in the process of developing the earth element incarnation. Her strength is no weaker than the Dragon Knight. Yes. He stroked Achi's beautiful blue hair and sent her to the ground. Then he quickly rode Bard and flew into the sky. After retreating to a distance of nearly 1 kilometer, he took out his binoculars, activated his crystal white vision, and quietly stared at the place where Chi was standing. Occasionally he would search the surroundings trying to find the unicorn. In his field of vision, Chi first hid in the material boundary. As a magic shooter who mastered the spatial elemental incarnation, she could easily enter and exit the material boundary. However, there was no movement for a moment, so she found a rock to sit on and took out a magic book to read. Her figure also appeared from the material boundary. Only then did the Pegasi and Storm Dragon horses that were grazing around notice Chi. There was a small commotion, and the entire herd of Pegasi moved a distance away. But as Chi quietly read, these Pegasi quickly relaxed and unconsciously returned to Chi's side. Occasionally, a Pegasi raised its head, looked at Chi and then lowered its head to continue grazing. They completely treated Chi as a harmless creature. Of course, Chi really didn't have any intention of harming the Pegasi. The one who really had the intention was List, not the siren magic shooter who was immersed in the world of magic. An hour passed in the blink of an eye. The unicorn didn't appear and the smoke mission wasn't completed. List frowned. Could it be that I'm too close? Maybe I really should stay away. Just thinking about it made him angry, but he still suppressed his emotions and rode Bard back 5 kilometers away. He set up his binoculars and carefully watched Chi and her surroundings. Half an hour later, there was still no sign of the unicorn. List was so bored that he started talking nonsense with the invisible dragon using the mind as one connection. Bard, do you think I'm a good person? Are you a good person or not? Recently, the taste of this batch of smoke grass has deteriorated a bit. List, do you think my taste is bad, or is the smoke grass sprite worm not working hard enough? Aren't you afraid of cavities from eating it every day? You should eat less. It will be better to eat it once in a while. I understand, but I still think that the smoke grass needs to be improved. Let the Magic Guild's mages evolve the smoke grass sprite worm into a smoke grass lesser sprite. This will definitely improve the taste. Do you think that a sprite worm can casually evolve into a lesser sprite? Why don't you just throw me a few space gems? I gave you the red dragon water in vain. Hehe, everyone has a share of the red dragon water, not me alone. How about this, I'll give you a red dragon water in exchange for a space gem. 100 for 1. Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? 3 for 1. Why don't you just rob someone? 3 vials of red dragon water can't even condense the outer skin of a space gem. I have to use my superior magic to condense it. 50 vials, I'll eat a loss, I'll trade. 10 vials for 1. Impossible, 40 vials. 15 vials, no more. 40 vials, no second price. 20 vials, I'm bleeding my capital. 40 vials, this is my bottom line. 25 vials, do you agree or not? If you don't, I won't trade. 40 vials. Bard sent him a firm message, take it or leave it. He didn't want to haggle with List anymore. List also turned silent. In the Steel Ridge Kingdom, the red dragon water could easily be sold for 20,000 gold coins per vial. In other countries, even 30,000 gold coins might not be on the market. Therefore, 40 vials of red dragon water were worth nearly 1.2 million gold coins. 1.2 million gold coins for a space gem was not a loss for the dragon-raising family. However, List himself was raising the invisible dragon, and he was unwilling to exchange so much red dragon water for it. Now he and Chi had 6 space rings, which was barely enough. Thus the topic stopped. He was unwilling to buy, and the invisible dragon was unwilling to sell. But at this time, through the binoculars, he saw Chi suddenly put down the magic book in her hand and turn her head to look at a certain place in the forest. This was not a casual look, but rather something. But when List turned the binoculars around, he could not see what Chi was looking at. There was no new mana retroaction light in his crystal white field of vision. Strange, Chi has clearly discovered the unicorn, so why can't I see the unicorn's mana retroaction light? Could it be that the unicorn can turn invisible like the invisible dragon? The thought had just arisen when he rejected it. According to legend, the unicorn could not turn invisible. Moreover, when the unicorn appeared, many people could see it. However, only pure virgins could approach the unicorn. Its special ability was probably to distinguish between good and evil. The next moment, he had a flash of inspiration. I carefully searched the Pegasus herd before and couldn't find the unicorn, but the smoke mission indicated that the unicorn was spying in the surroundings. Could it be that the unicorn can hide its mana retroaction light? In that case, I can see it with my naked eye. Thinking of this, he directly dispersed the crystal white track and used his naked eye to look. Sure enough, in the lens of the binoculars, a white and flawless Pegasus, almost to the point of being crystal clear, appeared. Bathed in a faint colorful glow, its four hooves did not touch the ground as it slowly approached Chi while treading on the air. Its body was not larger than the Pegasus or the storm draconic horse. It was just that the spiral horn on its head was not the silver horn of the storm draconic horse, but a golden horn that glittered like pure gold. Even at such a distance and seeing it through the binoculars, the word holy came to List's mind immediately. This is a real unicorn. To clarify. Chapter 938. The pure and holy unicorn was like a divine flying horse carved out of white jade, its body emitting a faint seven-colored radiance. The golden spiral horn showed its nobility without a doubt. Its soft mane and tail seemed to be woven from the clouds in the sky, and its streamlined body was both powerful and beautiful. Its pair of wide and flawless wings not only did not look out of place, but instead set off the extraordinary temperament of the unicorn. Its four hooves stepped in the air, creating circles of misty ripples. Apart from its golden horns, the only part of its body that was not white was its pair of big bright black eyes. Due to the distance, the details could not be seen clearly, but its black gem-like eyes made its white and cold posture suddenly sublimate to a lively and interesting temperament. It walked slowly to Chi's side, snorted like a horse and then looked at Chi, showing intimacy. Chi was very short, and the unicorn was about 4 meters tall, about the same size as List's black blood horse king Lightning. She wanted to reach out and touch the unicorn's head, but she could not reach it. However, the unicorn quickly lowered its head and let Chi touch the threaded golden horn on its head with a smile. Sure enough, the legends are true. List could not help but sigh when he saw the harmony between man and nature through the telescope. He was actually not angry about the smoke mission asking him to stay away. He was actually very happy that Chi could get the unicorn's favor. This trip was originally to find a suitable mount for Chi. The more noble and holy the unicorn was, the more it suited Chi's identity. I'm getting more and more curious about how many legendary creatures and treasures really exist. There is a real unicorn above the storm dragon horse, so is there a real phoenix above the blazing dragon bird? What's above the lightning dragon turtle? There were also many legendary creatures as magical as the unicorn. The three-headed hellhound that suppressed the land of exile, the sea monster Hydra that roamed in the Devil's Sea, the three-headed monster Chimera that had the head of a goat, a lion, and a snake, the giant wolf Fenrir that constantly ran on the icy land, the giant python that circled the continent head to tail, and the unkillable giant lion Nimia. There was also the guardian of the golden apple, a laden dragon that could not fly and could only run on the ground. In addition, there were also records of Asian dragons that were as powerful as dragons, the Leviathan, the behemoth of the sea, the behemoth of the land, and the behemoth of the sky. Do all these creatures exist? Are they as magical as the legends say? List didn't want to believe that there were stronger creatures besides dragons, but he had seen the incision on the emerald dragon's hind leg. It was definitely left by a creature more terrifying than the holy dragon. He had also obtained the wood of the golden apple. The handle of the scepter of time was made of this wood. If there was the wood of the golden apple, there would naturally be the golden apple. As for La Dong Long, who was guarding the golden apple, why wasn't he real? Most importantly, List had once seen an even more powerful existence, the Weave Dragon. The mana emitted by this dragon supported the entire magic civilization. If even such an inconceivable creature could exist, what else could not exist? In this magical world, anything is possible. He continued to observe the unicorn through the telescope. He could clearly see the unicorn's appearance with his naked eye, but once he used crystal track, the unicorn would disappear from his field of vision. He couldn't see the light of mana retroaction, nor could he see the unicorn's crystalline structure. It was as if such a creature had never existed. It was very magical and List wanted to find out more about it. However, he resisted the urge and didn't approach, giving Chi time to subdue the unicorn. Unlike the dragon that List subdued, the unicorn approached Chi of its own accord and quickly knelt on its forelegs, lowering its body so that Chi could climb on its wings. Although it had an extra pair of wings, it didn't affect riding. Chi was already skilled in horsemanship, so she was soon able to ride the unicorn for a leisurely stroll on the ground. When the storm dragon horses and Pegasi saw the unicorn approaching, they all lowered their heads to show their respect, as if they were subjects meeting their lord. He didn't know what the relationship between the unicorn and the Pegasi was, but among the Pegasi community the unicorn was the king. The storm dragon horses were second to it, and the Pegasi were the lowest. After slowly galloping for a moment, the unicorn soon gently flapped its wings and flew. Its wings were more like decorations, not flapping much. However, its speed of flight wasn't slow at all. It was like a shooting star that suddenly shot into the sky, and then suddenly landed on the treetops. It was even faster and more agile than the teleportation of the invisible dragon. The most peculiar thing was that when it flew at high speed, it would leave a rainbow behind it. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. The colors weren't very obvious and they quickly dissipated. However, the effect it brought was definitely at the level of a dream. Ichi quickly fell in love with the unicorn. Even List, who was watching from afar, had the heart of a young girl, wanting a unicorn that could create a rainbow. After flying for about half an hour, the unicorn began to fly toward List with Ichi on its back. When approaching the material boundary where the invisible dragon was hiding, the unicorn clearly hesitated for a moment, as if it already knew that the invisible dragon was hiding at the material boundary. It was unknown what Ichi said to it, but the unicorn relaxed and slowly approached the invisible dragon. "Brother, tell Bard to come out. Ichi has already spoken to the unicorn." Hearing Ichi's shout, List emerged from the material boundary and quietly floated in the sky. Bard stared at the unicorn, full of curiosity. Both he and List fell in love with this unicorn that could create rainbows. Wuxia. Bard tried to greet it. Snort. The unicorn opposite him snorted. It was unknown if it was responding to Bard. "Ichi, the unicorn can understand you?" List's eyes sparkled. He really wanted to ride the unicorn to prove that he was also a pure person. "The unicorn is very powerful, brother. Not only can it understand Ichi's words, but it can also directly communicate with Ichi through consciousness. It also has many mystical aspects, but because it has never come into contact with humans, many of its habits and abilities are waiting for Ichi to slowly explore." "It has never come into contact with humans?" List urged Bard to descend slightly. He glanced at the unicorn's crotch and discovered that it was bare. "Is it male or female?" "Brother, the unicorn has no gender." "No gender?" "Yes, like dragons and elves, it has no gender. But Ichi doesn't know where it was born, and the unicorn itself doesn't know either. It has lived among the Pegasus for as long as it can remember, and it was the female Pegasus who took care of it. Now all the Pegasus in the Pegasus forest listen to it. So it lets you ride it. Does it mean it recognizes you as its master?" "I don't know. It just likes Ichi very much, and Ichi likes unicorns very much, so it is willing to listen to Ichi's commands." Ichi smiled proudly, like a child who had gotten her favorite toy. Even though she had become a knowledgeable magic shooter, she still retained the innocence of a siren. Perhaps it was this innocence that attracted the holy unicorn. "Did you trigger a contract or spirit merge?" "No, we can only communicate through consciousness." Hearing that there was no contract between Ichi and the unicorn, or that there was a spirit merge like riding a dragon, List was a little disappointed. He actually believed in the constraints of contracts, but since there was no contract, it was best to lure the unicorn and the entire Pegasus herd to Flame Island. Chapter 939. In the next 2 days, List and Ichi stayed in the valley, familiarizing themselves with the unicorn. The bone dragon Winnie, the fire dragon Leo, and the invisible dragon Bard scattered around the periphery of the valley, each occupying a place to rest. In order not to disturb the Pegasus herd, List didn't let them get close to the valley. Ichi got along very well with the unicorn. She was basically familiar with all the magical characteristics of the unicorn. However, when it came to List, he could not even touch the unicorn. Even when Ichi spoke up for List, the unicorn still refused to let List touch it, let alone try riding it. "Interesting, I like it." List could only laugh dryly to hide his embarrassment. Usually he was the one riding a dragon and others were envious. Now that it was Ichi riding a unicorn, he was envious. Life was full of ups and downs. Fortunately, he could not ride the unicorn, but he could ride the Pegasus and Storm Dragon horses. Ichi could command the Pegasus not to resist. Thus, in the next 2 days, List rode all 3 Storm Dragon horses. He even personally gathered some fodder that the Pegasus liked to eat. With the unicorn suppressing them and the lure of the fodder, the 3 Storm Dragon horses no longer resisted List, and he could ride them as he pleased. The Storm Dragon horse was not as dreamy and beautiful as the unicorn, but it was still a top-notch super dragon beast. It could fly at more than 150 kilometers per hour, and it could fly for a day and a night without tiring. Even an ordinary Pegasus could fly at more than 100 kilometers per hour, and could easily fly for 3 to 5 hours. When running on the ground, the Pegasus was about the same speed as the Storm Dragon horse, about 100 kilometers per hour. However, their endurance was astonishing and they could run all day. After all, they were high-level super dragon beasts, and they were many times stronger than ordinary dragon horses. If orders of chivalry could equip a large number of Pegasus, their combat power would definitely be terrifying. After all, the combat power of an ordinary Pegasus was equivalent to that of a sword saint. At that time, unless the Dragon Knight took action, the Domain Knight and Ancient Warrior Inheritors would not be enough. At that moment, another neigh came from the sky. A small group of Pegasi flew over and landed in the valley, neighing at the 3 Storm Dragon horses in the lead. The Storm Dragon horses responded, and the new Pegasus strolled quietly in the valley, grazing with the other Pegasus. This was the 4th batch of Pegasi that had arrived in the past 2 days. Of course, it wasn't the Pegasi that came on their own initiative, but List's idea. He asked a Chi to communicate with the unicorn, and through the unicorn he ordered the Pegasi herd to call back all the scattered Pegasi. When he left, he would take away all the Pegasi in the Pegasus forest, leaving none for the Steel Ridge Kingdom. On day. As the last 2 batches of Pegasi arrived, the unicorn told a Chi that all the Pegasi in the forest had returned, except for those that had been captured by human knights. Dragon, and the Pegasus Dragon ZT Dragon. It, Dragon with the Valley, it with Dragon, and 1000 with Dragon King. According to the unicorn, the Storm Dragon horse's horn had been broken by a human knight in battle. At that time, a noble lord led the orders of chivalry to capture it, and then it killed them all. However, its spiral silver horn was also broken, its soul was injured and its temperament changed greatly. They were hostile to humans, but they seemed to feel inferior in front of their own kind. If not for the unicorn's forceful suppression, it would have fought to the death with List the moment it saw him. The Pegasus and the Storm Dragon horse were extremely afraid of the unicorn's authority, and did not dare to question its orders. In terms of size, unicorns were indeed very similar to Pegasi. But in terms of life essence, unicorns were a completely different species from Pegasi and Storm Dragon horses. After all, they didn't even have reproductive organs. Moreover, as the Chi continued to explore, the unicorn's abilities became more and more mystical. Every time she discovered an ability, the gap between her and the Pegasus widened. Even if one did not look at their appearances, a Pegasus and a unicorn could not be compared at all. Brother, a Chi discovered a new ability of Charlie. It's based on the essence of the elements and has the ability to increase the magic level of a spellcaster. A Chi said happily as she rode Charlie the unicorn down from the sky. The name Charlie was given by List. Even though the unicorn was extremely arrogant, it could not escape from List's shadow. As long as a Chi was convinced, the name Charlie was destined to accompany the unicorn for life. As for the name Charlie itself, it was List's deliberate bad taste. It originated from an American cartoon, Charlie the Unicorn. There was a unicorn named Charlie who was tricked by red and blue unicorns. When he entered Candy Mountain, his kidney was stolen. In fact, when List saw the unicorn, he inexplicably thought of this cartoon. Then, the tone of the red and blue unicorns tricking Charlie appeared in his mind. Charlie, increased the magic level of a spellcaster? List raised his eyebrows. A Chi, you mean if you release magic, Charlie can increase your high-level magic to the supreme magic level? Brother, look. A Chi casually released an ice magic and condensed a huge ice shield. The magic attached to it was easily seen by List. It was already an ice supreme magic. He picked up the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword, unleashed Dragon's fighting energy and slashed at the ice shield. Boom. A crack appeared on the ice shield, but it did not shatter. Obviously, it could still withstand many of his attacks. After discovering this fact, List could not help but marvel at the power of the unicorn's ability. It actually increased the high magic a Chi absorbed from the magic net by a whole level and became a supreme magic. It must be known that there was an essential difference between a supreme magic and a high magic. Supreme magic was rare in nature, and most of them were carried by dragons. The dragon's supreme magic could turn into metals, gems, eternal flames, storms that blew all year round, condensed gem spaces and could carry magic forms and so on. A Chi, you can rely on Charlie to control supreme magic. Does that mean that your supreme magic also has an eternal attribute? Regardless of whether supreme magic became an inextinguishable flame, an incessant storm or a metal or gemstone, they were essentially the eternal embodiment of magic power. The embodiment of ordinary metals was not obvious, but the magic power of gemstones could exist for a long time, and magic metals also had the ability to communicate with magic power. Unlike low and high magic, which quickly dissipated after being released, even if it turned into stone or ice, it would no longer have any magic properties. Hearing this, Achi shook her head. Brother, look at this ice shield. It melts very slowly. If there is no external interference, it might take 3 to 5 days to completely melt. But it will still melt eventually. Without the blessing of Charlie's ability, the supreme magic will quickly fall back to high magic. In other words, these supreme magic were essentially the embodiment of the unicorn's ability, and not the unicorn itself. Well, although you do not have an eternal attribute, so the value of your magic is not as high as expected, but if you cooperate with Charlie, your combat power will definitely not be inferior to any dragon knight. Even if I only ride an ordinary resource dragon, I'm afraid I won't be able to defeat you. List was somewhat melancholy. A dragon knight that did not ride a dragon would definitely not be able to defeat a magic shooter. In the past, List could still rely on riding a dragon to call himself the strongest in the Fire Kingdom. Now he might have to be more careful. Riding a light emerald dragon like Isin, who was not strong in combat, might not be able to defeat Achi. Chapter 940. Achi wanted to protect List. This was the thought that had been engraved in the little siren's mind since she was protected by List. List did not refuse Achi's kindness, nor did he have the idea of being protected by a woman. He and Achi had probably reached the point where it didn't matter who protected who. Anyway, they were already standing at the peak of the world's power. List smiled. List returned to the topic. So, raising the level of magic power is Charlie's new ability. In this way, Charlie's ability is even more powerful. Perhaps his combat power is not as strong as that of a dragon, but the increase in strength that he can bring to the rider, especially the mage, is indeed something that dragons can't match. As early as the moment Achi rode on Charlie the unicorn, the smoke mission had been completed. Mission completed. Reward, a unicorn. This meant that the unicorn had become Achi's exclusive mount, which was also equivalent to a powerful auxiliary power that List had. Helping Achi was equivalent to helping him, there was no difference. For the next 3 days, he cooperated with Achi to study Charlie's abilities. Charlie, who was very fond of Achi, was also very cooperative, constantly displaying his abilities. After a summary, there were roughly 5 magical and incredible abilities. The first, Void Gallop, Charlie did not have the ability to fly in the traditional sense. Its wings were just for show and it could not release any wind magic. Its so-called flight was actually more like running in the void. Space and matter had no binding force on it and it could run even in the water. Moreover, its speed in the void was so fast that when it sprinted, its figure was hard to see with the naked eye. According to Achi's calculations, Charlie's fastest sprint speed had exceeded the speed of sound, reaching 1,400 kilometers per hour, which was faster than Achi swimming at the speed of sound in the water. However, sprinting at top speed did not last long. Charlie could maintain sprinting at top speed for up to 2 hours, and its normal running speed was about 500 kilometers per hour. The second, Listening to Good and Evil. Charlie could distinguish the attitude of humans and any creature towards it, whether it was kind or malicious. Moreover, it could communicate with many creatures and understand what most creatures wanted to express. It was definitely a qualified translator. The third, Eyes of Truth. No means of concealment could be used in front of Charlie. At a glance, it could see through the invisible dragon hiding in the material boundary. Be it this kind of spatial concealment, camouflage, or transformation, nothing could escape its eyes. The fourth was the Pure Element. There seemed to be no magic flow in Charlie's body, but it could cooperate with Achi to show various characteristics similar to elemental incarnation. In particular, the space elemental incarnation allowed it to follow Achi into the material boundary and travel through space with the help of the invisible dragon bard. The fifth one was Magic Power Enhancement. This was the ability Achi had just discovered. It could enhance a spellcaster's magic power to a higher level. Each of the 5 abilities was miraculous, making the unicorn's value equal to that of a dragon. To some extent, unicorns were even more valuable than dragons. It was true that it could not produce resources and did not have the combat power to suppress a country. However, if it was used with a magic shooter, it could allow a magic shooter to unleash a powerful combat power comparable to a dragon knight. The ability to listen to good and evil allowed it to act as a translator in front of various creatures, which was definitely beneficial to the development of animal husbandry and breeding. For example, it could control the Pegasus herd. This was of great value and could help List in his new smoke mission. Charlie the unicorn has become a Chi's profitable mount and assistant. Although you don't know the relationship between the Pegasus herd and unicorns, this will not prevent you from migrating them to Flame Island and making them the exclusive Pegasus herd of the Flame family. Please complete this migration of Pegasus. Reward, Sun's Child Blood Password. With Charlie the unicorn driving the Pegasus to Flame Island was a piece of cake. As for the mission reward, List was a little surprised, but he did not feel surprised. There was a group of great mages in the Guild of Magic who were immersed in druid magic all day long. They studied druid transformation, magic bean planting, and the growth of transformation trees. And the basis of all druid magic research was the blood of Sun's Child. The descendants of the Sun, Phil the Old Cobbler, were born batch after batch. This group of mages arranged a group of willing female serfs to borrow seeds from Old Phil and bribed Old Phil's legitimate widow wife, so that there was no problem in borrowing seeds. It was submitted to the committee for review and handed over to List to make a decision. The great mages also swore that they would never mistreat the newborn babies of Sun's Child, and would train them as magic apprentices. After hesitating for a long time, List reluctantly agreed to this request. He also hoped that druid magic could really shine and contribute value to the Fire Kingdom. I'm finally going to crack the blood password of Sun's Child. Does this mean that in the future the mages of the Fire Kingdom? No, it should be the Arcanists, will also be able to cast druid transformation magic? List's identity as a mage was gradually fading. In the future, all the researchers and spellcasters related to magic would be collectively known as Arcanists. No matter what, he would not let the mages return to the battle order. As the beneficiary and manipulator of the Knight system, he needed to ensure that the Knight's ruling position would not be shaken for 10,000 years. Chi, you and Charlie are almost done getting used to each other. It's time to leave the Pegasus Forest. On the 22nd of July, List decided to return. They left on the 10th of July, and had already spent 12 days in the Pegasus Forest. The return journey would probably take another 2 days, which was exactly 2 weeks, which was in line with the expectations of the departure. Any more delay, and there would be a lot of accumulated work to do when he returned to the territory. Even if he could throw most of the work to his followers and his father, Marquis Oxtail. The country's early days could not be separated from his decisions. A large part of the reason was his own doing. He blindly pursued big work and started countless projects at the same time, which made his subordinates and officials unable to coordinate and maintain such a huge mess. Brother, Chi has already told Charlie that it will let the Pegasus herd leave with it. Yes, let's first plan a route to avoid the places where humans live, and then approach the coastline. But these Pegasus probably do not have the ability to fly across the sea, so we need Chi's help. Don't worry, brother. Chi can already release supreme magic, so it won't be a problem to bring the Pegasus herd to sea. That was indeed the case. When the Pegasus came to the seaside, Chi directly condensed a few huge ice shields, which floated on the surface of the sea. When all the Pegasus were on the ice, she rode on Charlie the unicorn and controlled the water flow to move the ice quickly on the surface of the sea. After a short acceleration, they quickly reached a speed close to the speed of sound. Chi, are you tired? List and Bard also stood on a huge ice shield. It's very easy. With Charlie's help, the cost of casting spells is very small, but the effect is very strong. Chi touched Charlie's silky mane and replied with a smile. She was in a very good mood these few days with such a beautiful and powerful mount. An hour and a half later, the Pegasus herd successfully arrived at the Island of the Heart. Chapter 941. The spectacular sight of the Pegasi stepping out of the magic sweeping reed attracted many onlookers. It was the first time many people had seen a beautiful, spirited, and winged horse. The Flame Person and Moonkiller Person all raised their heads and tried their best to look, wanting to admire this elegant creature that looked like a white swan. Suddenly, a knight pointed to the sky and exclaimed, "Horns, these Pegasi have horns, long silver horns. Knight's glory, is that a unicorn I'm looking at?" A unicorn? A knight heard the exclamation and quickly found the storm dragon horse with a silver spiral horn on its head, then quickly joined in the exclamation. "It's really a unicorn. Unbelievable, I'm actually looking at a unicorn, the purest creature in legends. 1, 2, 3, 4, there are actually 4 unicorns and one of them has a broken horn. Knight's glory, His Highness actually brought back so many Pegasi and unicorns, unbelievable." "What's so unbelievable about that? You should know that His Highness used to raise phoenixes in Thorn Castle." Some knight quickly calmed down after the excitement, retorting with a tone of someone who had seen much of the world. That's right, His Highness has even ridden so many dragons, these unicorns and phoenixes are nothing. At this moment, just as the Pegasi group flew out of the magic sweeping reed gate, two figures suddenly appeared in the sky. One of the figures was very familiar to the knights. It was the holy and incredible invisible dragon Bard, the great dragon knight lord who often rode Bard to inspect the place. However, the next figure quickly caused the knights to fall into a daze. It was a spirited creature that looked like a Pegasus. It was pure white and flawless, with a golden horn on its head and a body covered in rainbows. Its noble temperament did not lose to that of a dragon, and it was as beautiful as a dreamy creature. It's His Highness Achilles. His Highness Magic Shooter is riding a unicorn, right? Yes, that's a real unicorn. Legend has it that only the purest of girls can approach unicorns, and only His Highness Achilles is qualified to ride one. The Pegasus and Unicorn Pegasus flying in front of us are no match for His Highness Achilles' mount. Just as Liszt had expected, Charlie the Unicorn's appearance attracted everyone's attention. Even the invisible dragon Bard paled in comparison. Of course, it wasn't that the knights felt that unicorns were nobler, but rather that they had seen the invisible dragon often, so it was no longer a novelty to them. It was their first time seeing a unicorn. Big brother, Achi is going to settle down the Pegasus herd. It might take some time to find a place that the Pegasus like, but Charlie is very fast. It should only take a few days, Achi said. Okay, you go ahead. I have to go back to take care of business. Let me know when you've chosen the Pegasus habitat. I'll personally supervise the territorial officials to build a Pegasus ranch. I hope the Pegasus herd will be of use to me as soon as possible, Liszt replied, thinking about his Burning Legion. At present, the Burning Legion's plans were already very rich. Orders of chivalry with the Flame Dragon Bird as a mount, orders of chivalry with the Giant Elephant as a mount, Blizzard orders of chivalry with the Blizzard Beast as a mount, and ordinary Burning orders of chivalry with the Black Blood Horse as a mount. Now there were the Pegasus orders of chivalry with the Pegasus as a mount. Of course, there were still many difficulties in forming all these orders of chivalry. The Flame Dragon Bird could not be mass-produced, and the Fire Demon Swordsman had not yet been trained. No suitable breeding plan had been found for the Blizzard Beast, and the Bloodline Fruit was too rare to produce Blizzard Beasts in batches. However, if one did not accumulate step by step, one could always expand the Burning Legion into a powerful guard of the Flame family. Fighting in the north and south, unifying the continent. Looking at the white swan-like Pegasus and imagining his Burning Legion, Liszt suddenly thought of Big Bear and Bramble that he had abandoned in the Pegasus forest. The value of two high-level World of Warcraft was not low, but it was not easy to bring them back, so he did not look for them again. Let's meet again if fate wills it. Shaking his head, he thought of his 100 gold coins. Because he directly found the Pegasus herd, he did not go to the ranger to buy information. Now that he thought about it, although the money was not much, he always felt a little regretful. In a trance, a cloud of smoke appeared in front of him, forming a new serpentine content. Mission completed. Reward, the blood password of the Sun's Child. The new mission quickly covered the reward content. Mission: if you want to be rich, first build roads. However, for a world where magic exists, perhaps the magic teleportation array is the best way. As the Flame King, why not find more natural nodes to lay out a transportation network? Reward: new paper. Oh, if you want to be rich, first build roads. Sure enough, only my will can project this line. A special sense of superiority flashed through Liszt's heart when it came to the words and sentences of the smoke mission. He immediately began to think, rewarding me with new paper, is the White Paper Workshop going to release a new product? I feel that the quality of the current white paper is good enough. Could the new product be the paper towels I had them produce before? With the invention of white paper, thick bast paper, which tasted bad, was expensive and had little to write on, had been completely eliminated from the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Not only did white paper monopolize the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, it was also sold on a large scale to the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom. It became a product that the nobles flocked to. Every time he received a gift from the royal family, Liszt would choose some white paper, glass, porcelain, perfume and other items that he felt were worthless, but others felt were of high value as gifts in return. Among them, white paper was the most important, especially high-quality white paper. Because of the different techniques and pulp, the quality of the white paper produced differed greatly. At present, the workshop mainly produced and sold three kinds of white paper: hard paper, coarse paper and fine paper. Hard paper was thick cardboard. It was very simple to make and could be used to fold cartons and boxes. Coarse paper was the kind of inferior paper that was used to wipe buttocks. Fine paper was standard white paper that could be used for writing smoothly. It was very expensive, and only the great nobles could afford it. The white paper workshop also produced a kind of tribute paper that was not sold to outsiders but exclusively for List's use. Its quality was comparable to that of Xian paper. This was also one of the main gifts he gave to the royal families of the various countries. However, he was still not satisfied. He felt that the white paper workshop should also develop another type of paper like paper towels to replace handkerchiefs and napkins. After a while, the person in charge of the white paper workshop should report to me. Maybe then he will come with paper towels to ask for credit? List felt that this was the reward of the smoke mission. Although he could produce paper towels without the interference of the smoke mission, he still decided to take the time to find a new natural node. Chapter 942. Naturally, the search for the node would have to wait until the official business was done. List first returned to Fire Fort. He did not plan to start dealing with official business immediately. He first had a meal and then went back to communicate with his dragons. He had not seen the gray iron dragon Orn, the light emerald dragon Ethan, and the mountain copper dragon Marta for 2 weeks. The dragons should miss him very much. However, as soon as he returned to Fire Fort before he had time to take a bath, Butler Carter reported, "Master, you asked the knight to find the statue of the Moon Killer tribe. They have found 5 parts including an armed statue. They are all placed in the castle's warehouse. Would you like to take a look?" The armed statue. "Okay, I'll go now." List raised his eyebrows and immediately walked to the warehouse. The warehouse collected 5 parts of the statue fragments. He directly smashed all the statue fragments. The first 4 fragments did not have anything sealed in them. Only the 5th armed statue looked like a broken hand holding a round box. After smashing it, it revealed the artifact sealed in it. After wiping away the gravel and dust, it was a crown dotted with countless gems. So the gem crown reward from the previous smoke mission is here. It was not the Sapphire Grand Duke who wanted to give me a crown. List held the gem crown with both hands and looked at it carefully. It's a very interesting gem crown. It's completely made of some kind of golden thread tied with large and small gems. The gem crown in his hand was a crown with a dome structure. The entire dome was inlaid with various gems. Some gems were as big as quail eggs and some were as small as marbles. Compared to the usual dragon gems, these gems were relatively small. However, when List used magic eyes, he did not find that the magic power in them was thinner than the big dragon gems. Every gem is similar to a normal gem. There is no difference in the grade, and it seems that this gem crown does not have a duplicate gem? He identified the gems one by one. The sapphire sequence was transparent sapphire, 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 azure sapphire, royal sapphire, cornflower sapphire. The ruby sequence was bright amethyst, thick amethyst, amethyst, purple ruby, deep ruby, bright ruby, thick ruby, ruby, pink ruby, light pink ruby, emerald sequence. Light emerald, gold emerald, emerald emerald, emerald emerald, yellow emerald, golden emerald. There were also more than 10 types of gems between red, green, and blue that List could not identify. There were a total of 36 gems. The gems of the gem dragon are divided into 3 sequences: red, blue, and green. The principle is somewhat similar to the 3 primary colors visible to the human eye. I only know of 22 types of gem dragons. This gem crown actually has a total of 36 different gems, which means that there are at least 36 types of gem dragons. Regarding information about dragons, even the dragon-rearing clans did not know much. Even if they did, they would not publicize it. Therefore, List's knowledge of dragons was still very limited. It was impossible for him to know all the gemstone dragons. This jewel crown uses 36 gems. With the power of the ancient magic shooters ruling the entire legendary continent, I'm afraid they could really find all the jewel dragons. Could it be that there are 36 types of jewel dragons? He really wanted to appraise this crown immediately. Unfortunately, the ancient book of knowledge was with a chi and could not be contacted for the time being. Therefore, he could only think to himself, 6 artifacts of the ancient magic shooters. I have already obtained the 8 dragons' divine sword, the ancient book of knowledge, the scepter of time, and this jewel crown. There are still 2 left. Which 2 will they be? It seems that these artifacts are related to dragons. Will the remaining 2 also be related to dragons? The 8 dragons' divine sword was forged from the supreme magic of the elemental dragon. The ancient book of knowledge was very magical, and the materials used to make it were still unknown. The scepter of time was made from the time diamond of the twilight dragon and the wood of the golden apple. The jewel crown was almost entirely made from the gems of the gem dragon. Will there be an artifact made from the metal alloy of all the metal dragons? And then the other artifact, will it be made from the materials of the holy dragon? The fairy dragon is in the land of exile, the smoke dragon seems to be just a cloud of smoke, and the twilight dragon has already appeared. He touched his chin and made his own guess. There are still the emerald dragon and the invisible dragon. The emerald dragon's ability should be the enchanting dragon soul fruit that it condensed, which is not easy to make equipment. Taken together, the remaining two pieces of equipment are likely to be a weapon made from the metal dragon and a spatial equipment made from the invisible dragon's gem. While he was thinking, he had already put the jewel crown on his head and then looked carefully in the mirror. From the perspective of modern people, the design style of this crown was very old-fashioned and not fashionable at all. But the dense and harmonious and gorgeous gems on the dome alone were enough to amaze and envy. 1 gem alone or 100 gems alone was nothing. The key was the types of gems, a total of 36 types. To be able to match such a complete variety of gems, this jewel crown was already priceless based on its rarity alone, enough to become an heirloom of the dragon-raising family. And wearing a priceless heirloom on one's head, even if it looked like a pile of shit, its dignity could not be ignored. What's more, it was a piece of magic equipment. List tried to activate the 36 gems on the jewel crown with his chi. In the blink of an eye, he only felt a powerful force being forcibly injected into his body from the jewel crown. His whole person seemed to have been reborn and his vitality swelled a lot. His strength, spirit and chi all reached the peak. I feel like I've never been so powerful. The 36 dragon gems activated at the same time not only enhanced me comprehensively but also exceptionally abundant. Ordinary gem weapons are difficult to use together because of the conflict of magic between the various gems. I didn't expect the jewel crown to be able to stimulate the enhancement of all the gems harmoniously. Feeling the abundant power in his body and the dragon chi that was about to overflow, there was only clarity in his mind. He felt it for a while and directly flew out of Firewood Castle, came to a forest, pulled out the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword, and frantically used the Chi Secret Manual. The Chi move transformed into a monstrous flame, knocking down the trees in the forest one by one, burning and shattering them, leaving charred sword marks on the ground. Strong. Really strong. My current strength is definitely at least 3 to 4 times stronger than before. After a set of Chi Secret Manual was used, he put away the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword in his hand without blushing or panting, then took off the jewel crown on his head and held it in his hands. The more he looked at it, the more he liked it and the more he looked at its rustic style. After wearing this jewel crown, my personal strength increased crazily. I'm afraid I'll be able to catch up to a normal magic shooter. If I wear this jewel crown while riding a dragon, I should be able to increase the strength of a dragon knight by at least 30%. 30% strength is enough to decide the outcome of a battle to slay a dragon. He put on the jewel crown again and looked at the sunset. Chapter 943. After eating and taking a bath, List did not choose to spend the night in Firewood Castle. Instead, he put on the jewel crown, rode the invisible dragon bard, and traveled through space to Thorn Castle on Black Horse Island for the night. He wanted to appease his elves as well as the gray iron dragon Aun, who guarded Black Horse Island. He wanted to ride it and try to leave his spiritual imprint. Many days later, Aun's negative feelings towards him had gradually faded, and he began to try to accept List's care. Positive emotions were constantly heating up. Roar! Aun expressed joy for the arrival of List for the first time. So 1 man and 1 dragon hovered over Black Horse Island at night, not trying to develop too many skills, but trying to practice the Dragon Do Chi secret book created by the previous generations of Grey Iron Dragon Knight. List, wearing the jewel crown, felt that his cooperation with Aun had greatly improved their strength. This artifact was of great value, worthy of being made by an ancient archmage. Of course, perhaps the jewel crown was more suitable for archmages. When the time came, he would give it to a chi to try it on. Anyway, he and a chi were the same, whoever needed it could wear it. They strolled around a few times. Back at Thorn Castle, the Thorn Sprite Ella had been waiting in the castle's living room, along with the Pea Sprite Ike. "Wow, List, you didn't come to see me when you came back," Ella complained as soon as she came up. "I heard you were sleeping, so I didn't disturb you." List picked up Ella, put her on the table in the living room and said solemnly, "Ella, you have grown up and it is time to take on more important responsibilities. I am going to hand over the responsibility of Thorn Castle to you. Do you have confidence?" Ella clenched her small fist, raised her head and responded proudly, "Humph, those elves who dare not listen to me, Ella, let them taste the iron fist of justice. Don't be violent, be gentle." List smiled. It was probably a line that he accidentally came up with one day, and Ella had learned it well. Ella snorted again, "If Ike is disobedient, Ella will beat it up." Ike pulled the rope and sneered. She had never been afraid of Ella, and she didn't recognize Ella's temper. Perhaps other elves were afraid of Ella's temper and had no choice but to accept her hegemony, but this did not work in Ike. List was too lazy to care about how the elves schemed against each other. As long as they did not fight, he would let them go. Perhaps with the existence of a grumpy elf like Ella, the elves in the castle would evolve faster so that they would not eat and sleep all day. "Ike, how's the progress of Orn's evolution?" "I was just about to tell you, List. I feel like I'm in great shape recently. But it's not enough. I want a piece of Orn's scale. Can you help me get it?" "You want a piece of Orn's scale? Let me try." He placed great importance on Ike's evolution process. Thus, after Ike made her request, he immediately went to find Orn. "Give me one of your scales." Roar. As expected, Orn rejected forcefully. Splash. List took out a bottle of red dragon water and handed it to Orn's mouth. After spitting out a breath, Orn's eyes flickered twice and he chose to eat the red dragon water. Then he shook his tail and shook off the smallest scale on his tail. Then he crawled on the ground and began to sleep. Perhaps he was afraid that he could not resist the temptation of the red dragon water and would have to sell his scales again. Picking up the scale, List did not insist on a better one. The scales of the gray-mouthed iron dragon were very big. The smallest scale was equivalent to a wash basin for Ike. It was enough for her to hug the scale to sleep. "Thank you, List." "You're welcome, Ike." "Wow, what is the annoying Ike hugging?" "List, I want one too." Ella was very unhappy that Ike got Orn's scale. List raised his eyebrows. "If you also like a dragon, I will definitely give you a dragon scale." "No, Ella doesn't like dragons." "Then go to sleep." Just as List was busy comforting the dragons and elves, the blood code report of the Sun's Child was quickly presented on his desk. In his spare time he flipped through the report, which recorded densely packed experimental data. He felt a headache just by looking at it. He directly flipped to the end of the report and looked at the conclusion. Through the complicated and long-winded records of the mages, he barely understood the true meaning of the blood code. Tiny blood particles, magic coat. According to the report, blood was composed of tiny particles, roughly cells, and the tiny blood particles of the Sun's Child were wrapped in a layer of magic coat. To be precise, it was a super tiny magic array with the ability to self-replicate. In addition to self-replication, this layer of magic coat allowed the blood of the Sun's Child to be stained with magic coat. It also had another function, which was to be a key. It was the key to unlocking the druid's transformation magic. In order to understand the report more clearly, List directly called Chris Truth over and asked her to explain it to him. Although Chris was mainly in administrative work, she still had a deep understanding of the cutting-edge magic research of the Guild of Magic. "Your Highness, to put it simply, the magic code of tiny blood particles should be a means of alchemists. According to the principle of interchangeability of magic and matter, human blood and animal blood are exchanged." Human blood and animal blood exchange? Yes, Your Highness. When human blood is replaced with animal blood, coupled with druid magic, people can immediately become animals made of animal blood. Perhaps the research of the ancient Sun's Child was limited. They only chose bears, leopards, eagles, dolphins, owls, and trees as transformation objects. Since it's animal blood, what's the deal with turning it into a tree? Human blood can also become the liquid in the tree, and then it can also activate druid magic and turn it into a big tree. Chris immediately explained the principle of magic in detail. To sum it up, it seemed whimsical, but in fact it was really whimsical and very magical. It was not something that ordinary mages could study thoroughly. It must have come from the hands of the archmages of the Sun's Child. "I think I roughly understand." List nodded. In fact, he did not understand, but as a polymath, it was not suitable to ask repeatedly. He would let a chi explain it to him in the future. Of course, this did not prevent him from continuing to communicate with Chris. "So, since the Guild of Magic has cracked the blood code of the Sun's Child, does that mean that all mages can learn some druid magic?" Chris replied a little awkwardly. Although we understand the principle, we still can't crack how the archmages of the Sun's Child engraved the magic in the blood. So for the time being we still can't learn druid magic. List frowned. Can I understand it this way? The Guild of Magic spent a huge amount of my investment, and then researched a bunch of useless results? Your Highness, for the time being, druid magic research really can't display its value. Then cut the funding. I remember I asked you to cut the funding for druid magic research before. Yes, but there are many mages in the guild who are very interested in druid magic. Convey my orders, cut the funding for druid magic research by 2/3. Ordinary mages are prohibited from using the guild's resources to research the project before they advance to Great Mage. Great Mages must ensure that 2/3 of their energy is used to research the project issued by the guild. Violators will be expelled from the guild. List was a pragmatist and had no interest in reviving a declining civilization. Druid magic was not necessarily better than the current system of mages. Moreover, he planned to replace mages with arcanists, so it was even more impossible to revive druid magic. Druid farming magic could be researched. As for transformation magic and the like, it looked interesting but had little practical significance. Even if the project was not completely cut, the funding would be severely cut. He thought about it. Chapter 944. On the way out of Firewood Castle, Chris sighed helplessly. She was very clear about His Highness's attitude towards magicians. This was also the attitude of most knights towards magicians. They couldn't live without them, they didn't like them, they worshipped them, but they were wary of them. After all, in the era of the legendary Moon Empire, mages were the rulers, and knights were just followers of mages. This time His Highness is angry. If he really wants to cut the funding for the Druid Magic Research Project, I'm afraid the Guild of Magic will be shaken. She raised her arm and looked at the 2 gemstone rings on her finger. Her gaze suddenly became cold. His Highness's decree is the reason for the existence of the Guild of Magic. She had previously contributed to the management of the Guild of Magic, and mages could not be infeft as nobles, so List rewarded her with 2 gemstones. She made the 2 gemstones into magic rings and wore them on her finger. Putting down her arm, Chris looked up at the starry sky and murmured softly, His Highness's ambitious plan for mages, no for arcanists, and the light of truth from His Excellency Achilles. The times are advancing and no one can stop it. As the executive vice president of the Guild of Magic, how could Chris not know about the plan of the arcanists? Although she was also a mage, her life was saved by List, so List's plan was her plan. She could only support it. Moreover, she vaguely felt that mages were destined to decline, but the glory of the arcanists might blossom in the hands of His Highness List and His Excellency Achilles. Soon, the journey from Firewood Castle to the Mage Tower was completed. The Mage Tower was still brightly lit, and it was the brightest building in Firewood City at night. The sorcerers and magic apprentices hurried in and out. The noisy and strict atmosphere always made Chris feel uncomfortable but comfortable. Comfortable because the veil of truth was unveiled here. Every day was a gathering of mages, and there were countless collisions of inspiration. Uncomfortable because it was completely different from the life of a mage she experienced when she was young. The inheritance of mages was secretive, and most of the old mages who studied magic all year round had a twisted mentality. They liked to live in the wilderness far away from human habitation and conduct magic experiments that could not see the light of day. Although the teacher Chris followed wasn't a pervert, he also liked to live in the wilderness and research all sorts of strange things. Later on, she was brought by her teacher to join the goat gathering and began to study the soul. She even spent a long period of time conducting pathological experiments on animals. If it weren't for the collapse of the goat congregation during the dragon-slaying incident and the fact that she was saved by List, she might have become a solitary and paranoid sorcerer. Mr. President, you're back. A magician greeted Chris politely, interrupting her reminiscence. Chris nodded and put on a serious expression. Sir Maurice, are you on duty tonight? Yes, it's my shift tonight. Yes. Chris didn't waste time with Maurice. The Guild of Magic now had more than 300 mages from all over the world. If he spoke too much nonsense, he wouldn't be able to respond at all. Soon, she returned to her office amidst the constant greetings on the way. Immediately, an assistant sorcerer brought her coffee. She had never been used to drinking green tea, which was popular among the nobles. Is Vice President Kenley in the office? Vice President Kenley went to the Dragon Valley to investigate the Dragon Pit mine. Is that so? Send her a magic message and tell her to come to the Guild of Magic tomorrow. I have something important to discuss with her. Yes, Mr. President. The assistant went to send the message. Chris took a sip of coffee and picked up a few documents on the desk to read. She saw that there was a report on the application for Druid magic research funding. She threw the report aside. After thinking for a while, she took out a piece of paper and wrote on it. The graceful serpentine slowly appeared. Regarding the requirements of His Highness List Flame, the honorary president of the Guild of Magic and the chief observer of the Arcana Assessment Board, regarding the Druid magic research. After venting his anger on the Druid magic research, List threw the problem to the back of his mind. It was not a big deal to him at all. He was a dragon knight with 6 dragons: Fire Dragon Leo, Invisible Dragon Bard, Mountain Copper Dragon Marta, Grey Iron Dragon Orn, Light Emerald Dragon Ethan, and Bone Dragon Winnie. No matter how crazy the mages were, what could they do? His so-called scram if you don't want to do it was not just to chase them away. There were too many secrets on Flame Island, and these mages were more or less involved. In order to prevent these secrets from being exposed, the mages who left would naturally need to encounter some natural disasters on their way out. Moreover, the magic door of the Heart Reed teleportation formation had strict management rules. Mages were allowed to enter but not leave. Even if it was a knight, commoner, or merchant, it was easy to enter through the magic door of the Heart Island, but if they wanted to leave through the magic door of the Reed Marsh, they would have to go through many checks. All in all, List's management of Flame Island was loose on the inside and tight on the outside. There were not many security and defensive measures on the inside. Regardless of whether they were rats or spies spying on the military or fishing in troubled waters, they would let them do whatever they could. All the energy was focused on guarding the entrance and exit. It was almost impossible for rats or spies to sneak out, unless they left by sea. However, Flame Islands were located in the vast sea. Without a professional fleet with sextant positioning, and magical equipment such as water calming pearl and wind pearl to avoid the wind and waves, it was impossible to sail far. Even if there really were rats or spies who spread the secrets of Flame Island, List wouldn't care too much. When friends came, there would be good wine, and when enemies came, there would be dragons. Now that Achi's combat power had skyrocketed after riding on the unicorn, he and Achi could rely on the invisible dragon to travel through space. They were not afraid of any threats at all. Only the Flame Kingdom had ideas about other countries, and other countries didn't dare to have ideas about the Flame Kingdom. In short, the blood password of the Sun's Child was just an interlude. He had to appease the dragons and elves, and in addition to dealing with cumbersome official duties, he was delayed for 2 days. It wasn't until the 4th day after returning home that he found time to travel with the invisible dragon to the world outside the material world, looking for natural nodes. Using the magic positioning technique, he carefully searched for every trace of abnormal spatial trajectory. However, the natural nodes that were easy to find had already been found. The remaining natural nodes were very hidden nodes, and it was very difficult to determine the existence of the node through the almost undetectable abnormalities. So for 3 days in a row, he and Bard entered the world outside the material world from different parts of Flame Island, but still found nothing and couldn't find a new natural node. At this time it was the scorching August. Achi had already found a forest suitable for the Pegasus herd to live in with Charlie the Unicorn, which was located in the center of Flame Island near the Moonkiller's sacred mountain. Brother, there is a plain just between the forest and the grassland, and there is also a large river flowing through the middle. Charlie likes it there very much. He grew up with the Pegasus herd and is very familiar with the environment they like. It's located on the side of the Moonkiller's sacred mountain. The mountain Copper Dragon Marta is entrenched in the sacred mountain, and the entrance to the ruins arranged by the ancient magic shooters is also there. For the time being, let's set up the Pegasus Ranch. When you have time, we'll sort out the natural nodes at the entrance to the ruins and see if we can enter the ruins. Achi nodded. Okay. The entrance to the ruins was a broken space node with 2 entrances. One led to the Hourglass Valley of the Sacred Mountain, and the other led to the Eternal Paradise, mentioned by the Moonkiller's sacred mountain, which was the real entrance to the ruins rewarded by the Smoke Mission. The ruins of the ancient magic shooters were buried there. Unfortunately, the entrance to the Eternal Paradise was too dangerous. He drove the invisible dragon Bard several times, but he didn't dare to pass through the broken space crack, for fear of being directly obliterated by the crack. Chapter 945. After searching for another 3 days, List finally found a new natural node. However, when the natural node was opened, it appeared on Wudong Island, the seventh largest island in the Fire Archipelago. It was a large swamp. As long as the swamp was properly planned and built lakes and canals to divert water, it could quickly become fertile land. However, this huge swamp was on Wudong Island. List did not even have the energy to develop Fire Island, let alone Wudong Island in a short time. Moreover, he was prepared to treat the surrounding islands as fiefdoms and give them to his followers in the future for them to develop. This place will be called Dreamy Cloud Swamp. Leaving a name similar to XXX was here, List rode on the invisible dragon Bard and prepared to leave Wudong Island. However, he suddenly realized that there was a place in the Dreamy Cloud Swampland. In his crystal white orbit vision, there were a few faint but strong colors. Following the principle of plucking feathers from geese, he and Bard directly rushed to the place where the light was coming from. It was a dry land in the swamp. The area was not big, at most the size of a football field. There were sparse shrubs and weeds that reached half a person's height. There were 6 places where the light was coming from. He rushed to them one by one and found that there were 6 bloodline fruits. They were still in the stage of ripening, and there were a few World of Warcraft guarding them. After using Dragon's Might to scare away World of Warcraft, he easily put the 6 bloodline fruits into his space ring. After that, he had time to think. Something's wrong. I got 6 bloodline fruits at once. This is definitely not right. There's a natural node nearby, and there are many bloodline fruits here. Does this mean that this place is unusual, and there might be clues related to dragons buried here? According to the rules he had concluded, as long as there was a natural node, there would definitely be a conflict of high-level magic power, and dragons were the main cause of the conflict. Thinking of this, he did not hesitate to turn around and leave. Riding the invisible dragon, he quickly crossed the space and returned to Firewood Castle. Near Firewood Castle, Bone Dragon Winnie's dragon nest was being built. It was to find a shady place and dig a big pit. Because of the soul fusion with the Bone Dragon, Winnie also fell in love with low-lying, damp, and cold places. "Your Highness, are you looking for me?" Winnie said happily. "I may have a favor to ask. Just tell me what you want." "It's like this. I found a swamp on Parasol Island, and there are several bloodline fruits growing there. I think there might be clues related to dragons buried underground and I want to find them. But there are no serfs and my digging speed is very slow. The other dragons are not willing to dig at all." Dragons were prideful by nature, and it would be seen as a great insult to them if they were asked to dig in the soil and do hard labor. However, Winnie was different. She was essentially a human girl, so she readily agreed, "Your Highness, let me do the digging. However, I still hope to cooperate with you, Your Highness. My soul power alone isn't enough to control the Bone Dragon's body." As it spoke, the blue flames in the Bone Dragon's eyes flickered. List nodded. "Of course." So Bone Dragon Winnie directly transformed into her magic power form and attached herself to List's face. The formless dragon Bard tore through the material boundary and rapidly crossed space to return to the Dreamy Cloud Swampland's natural node. After landing, Bard went to find a place to rest. List summoned the Bone Dragon Winnie and rode on it. In an instant, he and Winnie connected telepathically. A wonderful feeling lingered in his heart, giving him a different kind of pleasure. Calming himself down, he quickly rode the Bone Dragon to work. The Bone Dragon's forelimbs were more powerful than excavators. They plunged into the soil and dug out several tons of soil with a slight force. Then he spread it on the nearby ground and even ground it to see if there was anything similar to the Emerald Dragon's hind legs in the soil. As he dug, the flat land where the bloodline fruit grew was dug into a pit that was 6 to 7 meters deep. At this moment, finally he found something unusual. It seemed that something hard was buried underground. As he continued to dig, the hard thing slowly revealed itself. It was a wooden thing that looked like a tree root buried in the pit. Its surface was already rotten, but after scraping off the layer of humus, the inside was still as hard as new wood. Its diameter was about 3 people hugging it, but it was only 14 meters long. The front and the end of the tree root were broken. What kind of tree root is this? Is it what stimulates the growth of the bloodline fruit? List manipulated the Bone Dragon to grab the tree root and weigh it in his hand. The Bone Dragon's vision couldn't clearly see what this tree root was. He personally cast magic eyes and also couldn't see what it was, nor could there be any mana retroaction. He could only tell from the lines at the broken part that it was originally a tree root. Is there any other part below? With doubts, List continued to dig for half an hour, expanding the pit to the size of 3 football fields. He even dug out the underground water, but unfortunately he didn't find any other broken roots. This was the only tree root here. In any case, this tree root is as thick as 3 people hugging it. When this tree was alive, it must have towered over the sky. If it gave birth to elves, what level would the elves be? Dragon elves, or the legendary elven king? List couldn't imagine the majesty of this tree when it was alive. Winnie also couldn't guess the origin of the tree root. Seeing that it was getting dark, he let the bone dragon Winnie return to his body, and then urged Bard to carry the tree root and quickly travel through space. The tree root was a bit too big and Bard had a hard time holding it. He also had to consume spatial magic power to make it blend into the world outside of the material world, which consumed too much energy. As a result, List felt distressed and took out a bottle of red dragon water to make up for Bard's consumption. Bard had already become his most capable partner. If it wasn't for the fact that he often chewed the smoke grass like it was chewing gum, he might have already surpassed the little fire dragon Leo. Grabbing the tree root, he rushed out of the magic sweeping reed gate. Finding Achi, who was still collecting information about the magic gate, List said directly, "Achi, look at what I found. This is a special tree root. I suspect that it has mysterious power and can promote the growth of the bloodline fruit. See if you can identify it with the ancient book of knowledge." Okay. Achi took out the ancient book of knowledge and touched the tree root. Soon, the ancient book of knowledge shone, and a paragraph of moon language appeared, golden apple wood. Golden apple wood. List was shocked and then he was overjoyed. This tree root is actually golden apple wood? The golden apple was a legendary treasure and no one knew what exactly it was. However, the value of the golden apple wood could be seen through the staff of time. As a support for the time diamond, it was definitely not an ordinary item. "Big brother, did you only find this piece of golden apple wood? It doesn't seem very magical." Achi was also surprised, but after looking at the wood, she was a little confused. This golden apple wood looked like an ordinary wood. Apart from being huge, there was nothing magical about it. Chapter 946. Sapphire strength increase. Topaz toughness increase. Amethyst recovery speed increase. Ruby magic growth increase. Emerald endurance increase. Pink mental power increase. Light emerald magic speed increase. The identification results of the ancient book of knowledge on the gem crown were not a whole, but for each gem that was close to the ancient book of knowledge, the ancient book of knowledge would give an identification result. Otherwise, the ancient book of knowledge would not be able to write 1 or 2 pages of the identification of so many gems. It would take at least 2,000 words, just one chapter. It was the ancient book of knowledge's identification of the 36 dragon gems that made List completely believe in the richness of the knowledge of this artifact and the accuracy of the identification content. Since the ancient book of knowledge said that this root was the golden apple wood, it would basically not be wrong, even if the root looked ordinary. Achi, the golden apple wood will be left with you for the time being. If you have time, you can study it. If you don't have time, you can give it to someone else or simply seal it and store it in the laboratory warehouse. Although Achi was a magic shooter, she was only one person. The other great sorcerers could not help her much at all. Other than her, other sorcerers were not qualified for many research projects. List did not want Achi to be too immersed in magic research, so he often took Achi around to relax and waste a lot of time. Therefore, many projects were sealed in the laboratory warehouse, such as the emerald dragon's hind legs, which were preserved with special sealing magic arrays. The same was true for the golden apple wood this time. A divine object that could promote the growth of the bloodline fruit was probably not something that ordinary mages could study, so Achi would have to wait until she had time to study it. For the time being, Achi will focus on the magic transmission array, and the golden apple would maybe postponed for a while. You see how it is arranged. After chatting with Achi for a while, he played the piano and Achi sang in the laboratory for an hour of entertainment and relaxation. Only then did he leave. After leaving, he did not continue to look for natural notes. After a week of searching, he and Bard were dizzy. He wanted to rest for a few days and relax. In addition, he had just obtained 6 bloodline fruits, and there was a long-awaited job to do. "Your Royal Highness, all the flying dust dog pups collected are here, a total of 21. The manager of the kennel reported. List could not forget the reproduction of the blizzard beast. Therefore, they searched and purchased flying dust dogs from all over the world and constantly bred flying dust dog pups that could be raised in preparation for the future training of blizzard beasts. Only 21 puppies? I remember that the kennel invested a lot. Why are there so few puppies? Orders of Chivalry sent a lot of adult flying dust dogs, but they are very wild. Many of them went on a hunger strike and died by ramming their cages. Very few of them were able to mate and give birth. In order to prevent the flying dust dogs from harming themselves, we have already lost several night soldiers, but we still couldn't stop them. In World of Warcraft, monsters were usually very wild and hard to tame. Dragons, on the other hand, were much more docile. Unless the dragon's might was used to suppress World of Warcraft would not yield to humans easily. Instead, it would find an opportunity to escape. Frowning, although he was not satisfied with the results, List did not criticize the kennel manager. So, has the mixed breeding plan of falcon hounds, violent dogs and blizzard beasts been successful? Your Highness, it seems that there are no results so far. Not only are falcon hounds unable to breed with violent dogs and blizzard beasts, but there are also other dog breeds that cannot breed with each other in World of Warcraft. Yes. List was not surprised. He never thought that it would succeed. He then personally selected 6 of the 21 puppies that looked more robust and fed them with a large amount of World of Warcraft meat. On the other side, the bloodline fruits were also planted in pots that had been fertilized with magic power. 2 of the 6 bloodline fruits were golden in color, which was compatible with the earth element. The other 4 were red, purple, green and white. The bloodline fruits' attributes were not very important. They were all special magic power that could help any World of Warcraft evolve. However, the compatibility between similar attributes would be higher. 3 days passed in a flash. The flying dust dog puppies were full of energy, and the bloodline fruits had also matured under the magic power fertilizer. Start nurturing them. Whether or not they can evolve successfully has nothing to do with the strength of the puppies, it all depends on luck. Although List said so, he still had a choice. The golden bloodline fruits were given to the 2 flying dust puppies that seemed to be the most energetic. The other bloodline fruits were distributed to the remaining 4 puppies. They were distributed one by one. The first flying dust puppy ate the red bloodline fruit and died not long after. The second flying dust puppy ate the purple bloodline fruit and bled from all 7 orifices, but it did not die. It was only on the verge of death. It should have also failed to evolve. The third flying dust puppy ate the green bloodline fruit and there was no change. No change? List carefully looked at the flying dust puppy. No change is the biggest change after eating the bloodline fruit. This means that the flying dust puppy has already swallowed the bloodline fruit's magic power, and it will slowly be stimulated in the future. He gave the flying dust puppy named Green Skin to the kennel manager. Take good care of it and arrange the best treatment. Understood, Your Highness. Then, the 4th flying dust puppy ate the white bloodline fruit and instantly became violent. After a while, the violent energy dissipated and it directly fell to the ground, making loud snoring sounds. It seems that this one also succeeded? List smiled. The magic eye observed that the magic power in Green Skin and the flying dust puppy named White Skin was constantly soaring, which meant that the power of the bloodline fruit was improving the bloodline talent of the flying dust puppy. The success rate of 2 out of 4 bloodline fruits was not bad. It also showed that List's luck, even without the help of the smoke mission, was pretty good. The 5th energetic flying dust puppy ate the golden bloodline fruit and died. To List's disappointment, the carefully selected one was not as good as the neglected Green Skin and White Skin. Shaking his head, he began to feed the last flying dust puppy, which looked the most energetic, and ate the last golden bloodline fruit. After a while, the flying dust puppy's nose began to bleed. Just when List thought that it was going to fail again, the flying dust puppy's nose quickly stopped bleeding, and its spirit fell into a frenzy, barking for a long time before it became dispirited. Although it was dispirited like the 2 successful flying dust puppies before it, the magic power in its body was rapidly increasing. There was no doubt that the flying dust puppy named Gold Skin had also succeeded. 3 failures, 3 successes. I am very satisfied with this result. List shook his sleeves and ordered the kennel manager, Green Skin, White Skin and Gold Skin, take good care of them. When the evolution situation stabilizes, I will let Captain Emily come and take over. He did not have the energy to tame these low-level World of Warcraft, so he could only let Emily do it. The kennel manager expressed his understanding and then asked, Your Highness, what should we do with this failed but not dead flying dust puppy? He was talking about the second flying dust puppy named Purple Skin, which ate the bloodline fruit and bled from all 7 orifices, but survived. Keep it. If it can survive, it will be treated the same as Green Skin and the other 2. Chapter 947. The flying dust dog evolved into a blizzard beast. List was not sure whether these 3 brand new flying dust dogs, 1 male and 2 female, could evolve into the same bloodline as Dosen and other blizzard beasts. He could only give it a try for the time being. He was looking forward to green skin, white skin and gold skin becoming the cornerstone of the Blizzard Beast Legion. 3 days were spent on this work. When List decided to search for the natural node again, he unexpectedly received a report from the steward of the White Paper Workshop. Your Royal Highness, the Knight's Glory, the White Paper Workshop has recently created a very valuable new product. The test results are excellent, so I have come to report to your Royal Highness. The smile on the steward's face could not be held back, and his expression was very proud. Really, what new product is it? List was a little surprised. He only found a new natural node and could not form a transportation network, so the smoke mission had been in an uncompleted state. He did not expect the White Paper Workshop to discover a new kind of white paper in advance. The steward smiled and motioned for his assistant to bring the box over, and then took out a tightly bound white paper. Your Royal Highness, this is the paper towel you have been asking for. We completed the manufacture about half a month ago, and after subsequent process improvements, the paper towel meets your standards, Your Royal Highness. The paper towel was not cut into small pieces but a large piece. The surface was very soft, and it was not yet of the quality of the Breeze paper towel on Earth, but it was already a qualified product as a hand towel. So this is the new product of the White Paper Workshop? List wiped his hands with the paper towel and felt that it was sloppy, not as good as the feeling of wiping his hands with a green silk handkerchief. This is the paper towel you requested, Your Royal Highness. It is not a new product developed by our workshop. Our new product is here. The steward took out a new piece of white paper from the box and respectfully handed it to List. Your Royal Highness, this white paper is made of hemp rope and rattan. Taking the white paper, List did not see any difference from ordinary white paper. The steward explained, this white paper cannot be burned by fire, it cannot be wet by water, it cannot be bred by moths, it cannot be torn by force, it is very difficult to cut with a knife. When we want to cut the raw edges, we ask the Earth Knight to cut them one by one. Otherwise, we won't be able to cut them. So magical? List was very surprised. He didn't expect there to be such a blank piece of paper. He used all his strength to tear it apart and found that the white paper was just as the steward had said. It looked like a thin piece of white paper that could be easily folded, but it was extremely difficult to tear it apart. Even though he had a strong physique nourished by the dragon's do-chi, he still had to use 30% of his strength to barely tear it apart. Without using his combat aura, 30% of his strength was even greater than a trainee knight. In other words, this kind of white paper could not be torn by ordinary people without the use of do-chi. In an instant, List thought of many possible benefits. If white paper was already so powerful, wouldn't it be nature-defying if it was used to make armor? Moreover, it was impervious to fire, blisters and insects, which made it as good as metal armor. It seemed that hemp rope rattan could not only be made into ropes, but also into paper and armor. List suddenly thought of something and asked, since it cannot be wet by water, how do we write on it with ink? The steward replied, Your Highness, the inconvenience of writing is indeed a disadvantage. But if we use the printing method to dye the ink and then expose it to the sun for a few days, the ink will completely soak in, and even a knife won't be able to scrape it off. The magician in charge of technical support has tested it and estimated that the words written on this kind of white paper can be preserved for thousands of years. Then he added, there is another disadvantage. The hemp rope rattan pulp consumes a lot of energy. Only the upper part of the pulp can be extracted to make white paper. With the hemp rope rattan output of the territory, I'm afraid it's impossible to make paper on a large scale. The labor consumption is also very high, the production cycle is complex and time-consuming, and the cost is very high. In any case, this kind of white paper made from hemp rope rattan was still very valuable. List quickly named this white paper rattan paper, and designated it as a tribute paper for his use. He wanted to use the rattan paper to copy the ancient books and compile a great fiery tome that covered all the contents of the universe and gathered the forms of the Yongla tome and the Siku Quanshu into one. At the same time, the Iron Knight and the Archmage took over and used the vine paper pulp for armor research, trying to create vine armor that was comparable to magical metal armor. Meanwhile, he also found that the smoke mission had changed. The mission has changed. He didn't complete the mission, but he received the reward in advance. This meant that he didn't need to do the mission to find the natural nodes anymore. It just so happens that Bard and I aren't strong enough right now, and the territory hasn't been able to gather enough materials to build more teleportation arrays. It won't be too late to search for new natural nodes later. He looked at the new mission. Mission: Phoenix Nest Tree. Great Elf Infant's condition isn't right. It can't focus on anything, and it doesn't have the mood to nurture the fire dragon bird. It also doesn't have the mood to touch the fire dragon Leo's scales. As the elf's master, you should help it out of its predicament. Reward: breeding a phoenix parasol tree. Oh. List almost immediately thought that Infant might be evolving from a great elf to a dragon elf. However, when he saw the mission reward, he felt that it wasn't a successful evolution yet. It's very likely that this is a process on the path of evolution. I have to go help Infant immediately. Riding on the invisible dragon bard, List directly traveled through space and arrived at the crater of the volcano. Soon he found Infant, who was in a daze on a phoenix parasol tree branch. It was holding its cheeks in its hands and looking at the sky listlessly. Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple stayed on different branches, and they seemed to be drooping because of Infant's listlessness. Infant. List. What's wrong with you? List felt Infant's heart. This great elf's emotions seemed to be dull after a tremble. It lost interest in everything and couldn't lift its spirit. Do you want to change to a new flavor of jade powder? I recently dug out a batch of fresh jade from the Jade Mountain. Many elves said that the powder is good. I can't eat it. Infant sighed. How about some smoke grass? List put on his mask and took out a portion of fresh smoke grass specially for the invisible dragon bard from his spatial ring. As soon as the unique smell was released, Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple disappeared without a trace. The listless Infant also covered its nose and jumped up. Enough, List, I don't want smoke grass. Then cheer up, Infant. I've already called Leo over. I'll ask him to give you a piece of fire dragon scale. You can hug the scale to sleep. List used his passionate emotions to constantly influence Infant and help it through the power of the contract. Chapter 948. Annihilus was in a good mood, and under Leo's malevolent gaze, he obtained a fire dragon scale. Everything was wonderful. Therefore, under List's astonished gaze, its worm stalk, the phoenix perched on the parasol tree, actually slowly blossomed into flowers that resembled flames. These flowers condensed rich fire-attributed magic power, and under the illumination of the sun, they transformed into clusters of flames. From a distance, it looked as if the entire phoenix perching parasol tree was burning. Goldie, and Goldie, the three fire dragon birds, which were growing larger and had already changed into bright red feathers, happily circled around the phoenix perching parasol tree. Even Leo, who had always disliked Annihilus, came over and sniffed the phoenix perching parasol tree. He liked this blazing tree. List, look. Annihilus carried the fire dragon scale on his back and then plucked a flame flower from the cordyceps. The flower immediately withered, the flame extinguished and turned into ashes. The ashes dissipated with the breeze, leaving behind 7 purplish-red seeds. This is the phoenix perching parasol tree seed. List, I can bloom and bear seeds. He put the seeds in List's hand and chuckled. Annihilus can cultivate more phoenix perching parasol trees. Annihilus wants to evolve, and phoenix perching parasol trees will cover the entire volcano. In the vision of magic eyes, the seeds flickered with fiery red magic power. Are these potions? List immediately had Annihilus try to sow a batch of phoenix perching parasol trees. Annihilus did as he was told, and with a wave of his hand, the flame flowers on the tree withered and turned into seeds that flew into the soil. Soon, small phoenix perching parasol tree seedlings broke through the soil around his cordyceps, grew in the wind and turned into small saplings. The saplings had not undergone selective breeding and were of varying quality, but each of them flickered with fiery red mana retroaction. Without a doubt, these phoenix perching parasol trees were all potions. Mission completed. Reward: breeding of phoenix perching parasol trees. Illusory smoke serpentines flashed, but List didn't notice them. He was still studying the phoenix perching parasol tree. Among all of his elfins, other than the 3 rubber elfins, which were of the same origin and were very miraculous, the phoenix parasol tree elfin was the most peculiar. It only had cordyceps and no other plants of the same genus. It was also the only cordyceps that didn't need the same type of plant to provide nutrients. Unfortunately, when List met Infant, it was already a great sprite. List did not know how it evolved from a sprite worm to a great sprite. Now that Infant had evolved into a dragon elf, he had unexpectedly blossomed and bred a plant of the same genus. It was truly strange. Strange as it was, List gave Infant a task after he could not figure out why. He asked it to plant a large number of phoenix parasol trees in the area affected by the cordyceps. When these trees ripened, it would be time to pick and refine the potion. He just didn't know how effective the potion refined by the phoenix parasol tree would be. Now the territory could produce more and more potions. The cannibal tree dragon elf Callie alone had a potion planting scale that could match the output of all the other elfins combined. The giant algae elf Parker, the thorns elf Ella, and the latest phoenix parasol tree elf Infant were the main force in the production of potions. Ella, in particular, had a huge output value of the auxiliary thorns, several times that of the potions planted by the average great sprite. Without these auxiliary potions, the potions in the territory would not be enough. Mission, as the saying goes, plant a Chinese parasol tree to attract a golden phoenix. The blazing dragon bird likes to nest on Chinese parasol trees and likes to build its nest on them. Why not plant a Chinese parasol tree forest to attract fire-type birds? Reward, an unknown number of fire attribute birds. It was not an accident. The smoke mission and the mission that List assigned to Infant actually coincided. World of Warcraft to attract fire attribute birds? There are special flamingos on Black Horse Island, low-level fire attribute World of Warcraft. I don't know what kind of fire attribute birds the Phoenix Parasol Tree Forest can attract. I hope it's not too bad. It's best to tame them as mounts or provide World of Warcraft meat. Originally he planned to let Infant plant the tree himself. But since there was a requirement for the smoke mission, List felt that he should spend some energy and complete the tree planting mission himself. Of course, personally, referred to transporting a group of serfs and knight to help Infant plant the tree and share its consumption. Leo, do me a favor. Oh. You don't want to? List stared at him. Then let's talk about it. He was ready to ride on Leo to launch a mind purification program and cut off the evil thoughts that Leo had developed during this time. It had to be said that with the increase in the number of training sessions, although Leo would still have evil thoughts, it was not as frequent as before. The reason was simple. A faint shadow of a knight appeared in his mind. This was List's spiritual imprint, and it began to suppress Leo's evil thoughts. At this moment, Leo's wingspan and body length had grown to 40 meters. The many volcano supreme magic in the endless volcanoes had played a huge role in his training. In addition, List provided him with food, potions, and good training guidance. He was getting stronger every day. His combat power had increased explosively. The light emerald dragon Ethan was no longer his opponent in a one-on-one fight. He began to directly threaten the gray-faced iron dragon On's position in the battle order. Sitting on the Dragon Fong platform. In the spiritual world, List did not hesitate to cut off the evil breeding fire dragon and let Leo be reborn. This time he readily agreed to help. On the way back, List called Ethan again. As for Marta, the mountain copper dragon, it was not used enough and could not be used for the time being. The three dragons were Bard, Leo, and Ethan. They grabbed a hot air balloon-like basket and pulled a total of 800 knight and serfs. They traveled all the way through the sky of Flame Island and returned to the endless volcanoes. Your mission is to cooperate with the Phoenix Parasol Tree Great Elf Infant under the command of Leader Paris to plant the seeds on the 6,000-acre land with the crater as the center. List rode on Ethan's back and gave orders to the knight and serfs. He also arranged for Paris to lead the work. Paris was his trusted follower. Arranging her here was enough to prove how important he was to the Phoenix Parasol Tree Forest. Your Highness, please rest assured. Leave everything here to me. Paris said solemnly. I am very relieved to leave it to you. However, you need to take note that these Phoenix Parasol trees are not ordinary. They are valuable potions. In the future, a group of farmers will be stationed here for a long time. While Infant is tired, let the serfs build a camp nearby. It is best to dig a cave. Dig a cave? Paris was puzzled. I am worried that these Phoenix Parasol trees will attract World of Warcraft. It is safer to live in a cave. List also did not know what kind of World of Warcraft would be attracted. But World of Warcraft was aggressive. He did not want his followers and serfs to suffer losses. Paris nodded. I understand. Life here may be a bit boring. If you need anything, you can ask me. I will come here about once a week. List said. He would come and train with Leo every time. Chapter 949. This chapter is titled, 100,000 Years of Salted Fish. August passed. There were two things worth mentioning. The first was that the green fur, white fur and gold fur, the three little flying dogs, had all grown up and learned the most basic talent spell, Rock Spike, after being nurtured by the power of the bloodline fruit. There was no doubt that with the continuous growth of the remaining power of the bloodline fruit, the three puppies would eventually evolve into higher-level blizzard beasts. The unexpected joy was the purple skin that had failed to evolve. It did not have the skyrocketing body shape of the green skin, white skin and gold skin, but it had comprehended two kinds of magic. One was the ordinary earth magic that the violent dog knew, rock thorns, and the other was a brand new magic that did not belong to the blizzard beast. Advanced earth magic, Rock Spike. This magic rolled up the earth from the ground and crushed the enemy like a rock. The purple puppy's magic reserves were not enough, so it was difficult to cast this magic, and it collapsed halfway through. But it was undoubtedly an advanced magic. Only intermediate World of Warcraft could learn advanced magic. The purple puppy might not have failed to evolve. It just showed the power of the bloodline fruit in another way, magic talent. It might become a spellcaster among the violent dogs. With this talent, it was no worse than the green, white and gold puppies, and it was in the limelight for a while. This was one thing that List wrote in his autobiography in August. The other thing was related to dragons. He finally left an immortal first-generation Dragon Knight soul brand in the heart of the light emerald dragon Ethan. This meant that without a cheat like the smoke mission, this soul bond could not be broken, and Ethan would forever be branded as List. After the soul brand was completed, in the Hall of Fire Castle, List solemnly summoned his genius girl follower. Emily, you are now a Sword Saint. Although the name Thunder Elephant Sword Saint is a bit inelegant, it proves that your ability has been recognized by everyone. In the Dragon Knight plan, you are currently the only knight who meets the requirements to ride a dragon, and you are also my most trusted follower. The young girl knew that she was about to welcome her fate, so she knelt on one knee and solemnly performed the knight's oath of allegiance. Your Highness, I will always be your sword. Where your Highness points, I will follow. Raise your head. List rose from his seat and walked toward Emily. The girl immediately raised her head. Her skin was still a healthy wheat color, but when paired with her exotic face, there was a different kind of beauty. Unknowingly, the little girl who used to be as thin as a stick already had a unique feminine charm. The way she looked at List, in addition to respect and determination, there was also a special kind of love. Moreover, this love was not concealed. When they first met a few years ago, it had already begun to germinate. Now, it had grown into a towering tree that could not be shaken. Your Highness. Coming to the girl's side, List lowered his head to look at the valiant and heroic Emily. He sighed with emotion. You have grown up. It is time to take on more important responsibilities. Get up and follow me. Ethan is already waiting for you at the dragon's lair in the Jade Mountain. From now on, you will spend half of your time getting used to Ethan. Yes, Your Highness. Emily was so excited that she was about to tremble. She stood up and followed behind List, following him step by step out of the castle. The formless dragon bard was there, chewing on the smoke grass in boredom. The smell was a little unpleasant, but fortunately it was windy today and not so obvious. In fact, no matter how strong the stench was, Emily would probably not smell it. Her heart had already flown to the distant Jade Mountain, to that beautiful, strong and powerful light green gemstone dragon. Many times in her dreams, she dreamed of riding Ethan and roaming the horizon. She longed to ride Ethan successfully. Although His Highness had said that even if she could not ride Ethan, there were still Ornn and Marta to choose from. But she firmly believed that Ethan was a dragon suitable for her. This was a strong intuition. In the castle, Steward Carter, leaning on a cane, walked to the castle gate to see his master and Emily off. Seeing that the little girl who used to often eat in the Flower Town's small castle was about to become a dragon knight, Steward Carter was sincerely happy. Praise Master, Emily will be a capable follower of Master. Immediately after, he added inwardly, perhaps sooner or later she will join the Flame family. Ethan's lair was on the Jade Mountain. In the valley near the mountain, a city had already begun to take shape. This was Jade City. More than half of the city's residents were Moonkiller serfs. They wore the most common sackcloth clothes and did the heaviest physical work. The other half were commoners of the Flame people. Although they also wore sackcloth clothes, their work was easy, so their clothes were cleaner and neater. They also wore some shells and other ornaments on their hands and necks. In addition, there were also some people who were knight or even aristocrats. On the Flame Island, an Earth Knight was basically an aristocrat. After working here for a certain period of time, one would be conferred the title of nobility. These aristocratic knights were often followed by a few trainee knights who acted as retainers. They liked to go to the taverns in the city for a drink or two and then leave in a hurry. Almost every knight had multiple jobs, such as managing the construction of the city or going out to explore the wastelands. Occasionally, one or two wizards would show up on the street to buy something, and then quickly get on a carriage and leave. Wizards mainly worked in the Jade Mountain mine. They were responsible for mapping the jade veins, guiding the serfs on how to mine the jade, seal it, and transport it outside. Tony was a magician, and he had been working in the Jade Mountain mine for 3 months. He came from the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and came with his great mage teacher. His teacher had originally planned to go back after the pilgrimage, but was attracted by the Druid Magic Research Project, so he delayed it until he did not want to go back at all. Although the Holy Land of Magic has the incarnation of truth who walks in the secular world, it is not a land of freedom. I don't know if teacher can survive this funding storm. Tony wrote and drew with a pen and paper while worrying about his teacher. With teacher's knowledge that Royal Highness should not be too harsh, right? A while ago, the executive vice president of the Guild of Magic, Chris Truth, suddenly called a meeting of arcanists. At the meeting, she announced that the Druid research funding would be cut by 2/3, and ordinary mages were prohibited from participating in the Druid research. Many great mages smashed the table and left on the spot. Actually, there was no then. As soon as they left the meeting room, the incarnation of truth who walks in the secular world rode over on a unicorn and made a big move as soon as he landed. A huge water blade slashed down and killed the 2 great mages who led the trouble. He then gave Chris a few words, the gist of which was that the troublemakers should directly report the name list. All the great mages who slammed the table bowed their heads and admitted their mistakes. No mage dared to question the magic shooter, not to mention that the magic shooter was riding a unicorn that was said to be close to pure girls. The unicorn was given too much meaning, representing justice and nobility. Whoever went against the unicorn knight was a villain, and they could not even get the sympathy of public opinion. Tony was very worried that his teacher was labeled as a villain. He was even a little absent-minded in his work. At this moment, suddenly a serf looked up at the sky and cheered loudly, "Seiki!" Chapter 950. The great big lizard flew across the sky with the great Seiki on its back, heading straight for the back of the Jade Mountain where the Emerald Dragon Ethan's lair resided. The lair didn't have many decorations, but it was filled with Ethan's favorite crystal tree ferns. The crystal tree ferns had been successfully cultivated long ago, but their growth was limited by the fact that they needed mana to grow. Normal mana fertilizer couldn't meet their needs at all. However, planting them on the Jade Mountain was killing 2 birds with 1 stone, because there was a large amount of jade or slag here. These slag were between jade and rock and were difficult to use, so they were used to cultivate the crystal tree ferns. The roots of the crystal tree ferns could absorb the mana from the jade slag, so they grew very well. Less than half a year after being planted, they had already become a forest of crystal sculptures. Ethan lived in the embrace of the crystal tree ferns. He was very careful not to damage any of the crystal tree ferns. He always felt that these beautiful little trees were like they grew out of his body, so he treasured them very much. Ethan usually slept on a small flattened hill. Currently he was bathing in the sunlight, his eyes half closed as he looked at the beautiful crystal tree ferns, which shone with various colors under the sunlight. There was a wine pond beside his neck, brewing the newest recipe of bone wine. Among the food he loved bone wine the most. It was delicious, but it didn't go to his head. Suddenly he sensed something and raised his head. He saw a familiar figure flying over from the horizon. It was Bard the Formless Dragon. He didn't like this dragon that ate grass and smelled bad, but he knew that Bard wouldn't casually approach his lair unless List came. "Is the new knight here?" He didn't move. He waited until the little ant's shout came from the other side of the Jade Mountain before he raised his head and stood up, lazily welcoming List's arrival. With the pride of a dragon, he wouldn't do something as embarrassing as welcoming a human without the suppression of a spiritual brand. "Ethan, long time no see." A clear voice came from the sky. Then a silver-white figure jumped down from Bard's back, followed by a gray figure. They were undoubtedly List in his Thunder Fury armor and Emily in her World of Warcraft armor. "Roar!" Ethan called out and had List land on his back. He quickly mounted the Dragon Tooth Terrace and entered Dragon Rider mode. Through the mind as one connection, the purpose of his visit was clear. "Roar!" Ethan nodded and looked at Emily, who was standing at the side with her back straight. In its hundreds of years of life as a dragon, it had never met a female dragon knight. In fact, it had only seen a few female sky knights. "Emily, say hi to Ethan." List jumped off the dragon's back. Emily took a step forward and took a deep breath. She looked Ethan in the eye. "Hello, Ethan. I'm Emily. I'll be training with you in the near future. I hope we can acknowledge each other." Puff. 2 streams of air puffed out of Ethan's nostrils. He had heard from List that he wanted to find a new knight for him. He had been a knight for many years and was used to changing knights. He even hoped that he could get a new knight. He and List didn't like each other, and it was a coincidence that they became a pair of dragon knight. But before Emily gained his approval, he wouldn't give her any face. List sensed Ethan's disdain for Emily. He patted Emily's shoulder and said, "Ethan's nobility and pride need your hard work to impress him. Remember what I told you. Be brave, fearless, strong, loyal. Show these qualities." "Yes, Your Highness. Then you can stay here for the time being. I'll come back to check on you and Ethan in 3 days." List smiled. His warm smile gave Emily endless confidence. Only after List rode the invisible dragon Bard away did Emily face the emerald dragon Ethan, who was dozing off once more. She remembered the truth List once told her: a bootlicker will end up with nothing. "Ethan, maybe you don't know me," she said calmly. "I was born a serf. I started training impetus when I was 11, and became an Earth Knight when I was 12. Ethan didn't respond lazily. "A few months later, I killed 2 knight on the battlefield and became an elite Earth Knight. When I was 14, my impetus suddenly surged and I soared into the sky, becoming a Sky Knight." Ethan still didn't respond. "In 2 months, I defeated an old Sword Saint and obtained the title of Thunder Elephant Sword Saint. I'm only 14 now, but my training is still progressing rapidly. It's only a matter of time before I become a complete Sky Knight. Maybe next year, maybe as soon as the end of the year." Ethan lifted his eyelids and puffed out 2 streams of air as if to say, "So what? I've seen all kinds of monsters in my life. I may not be the first person to become an Earth Knight or a Sky Knight in the legendary continent, but I'm definitely the first female to become an Earth Knight or a Sky Knight. I'm also destined to be the first female Dragon Knight to become a knight in the legendary continent. Ethan, the legend is right before you. Let's create it together." With that, she looked at Ethan seriously. Ethan opened his dragon mouth. Amidst Emily's anticipation, he yawned seriously and closed his eyes to doze off. After a while, he started snoring softly. This was a great humiliation. However, Emily was only a little disappointed. She quickly adjusted her emotions and stayed at the side to train her combat energy. His Highness said that riding a dragon requires strategy. Blindly flattering the dragon won't increase the success rate. We must let the dragon see the precious shining points of a knight. She gripped her greatsword and List's shining points flashed in her mind. Handsome, talented, outstanding, brave, and the embodiment of justice. There were too many other things. However, the decisive shining point was what List had told her himself, forcing himself on her. "I can't be as domineering as His Highness, but I have my own shining point, diligence. I'll let Ethan see my determination. He'll finally become my mount and fight alongside me." List left in a carefree manner. He wasn't worried that Emily wouldn't be able to ride a dragon. Even he was jealous of her talent. What was more frightening was her determination to become stronger. As long as Ethan wasn't blind, there was no way he wouldn't like Emily. He now paid attention to a piece of news he had just received. There was news from Black Horse Island that the Eagle royal family's fleet had arrived at the port, carrying the dragon elves as ransom. They came to redeem the Grey Iron Duke, Piero Grey Iron. They originally asked the Grey Iron family to change their surname, but Piero provided information about the Orichalcum dragon. List gave up on this request. Chapter 951. Duke Piero had been eating and drinking well on Black Horse Island. He was not a fool. He had already guessed the outcome of the Orichalcum dragon from List's calm expression. To be able to snatch the gray-mouthed iron dragon Aon away in such a short period of time, it was enough to prove how powerful this young dragon knight, who made him feel conflicted, was. That's why he used the information of the Orichalcum dragon to help him stabilize his position as duke, hoping to keep his power and wealth. How can a person who has enjoyed the taste of prosperity be willing to let go? At least Piero can't do it. "Your Majesty, the Eagle royal family's envoys have talked to me. I can return to the Grey Iron Duchy after the Dragon Elf deal." After seeing Liszt, Piero said frankly, "With the power of your majesty, I am still the Duke of the Grey Iron Duchy, but I still have to pay tribute to the Eagle Kingdom. I dare not easily cut off the vassal relationship." It was one thing to secretly change sides, but on the surface he had to take into account the Eagle royal family's face. After all, the Grey Iron Duchy was thousands of miles away from the Fire Kingdom, but it was on the border of the Eagle Kingdom. "It doesn't matter. I will naturally protect you. The Eagle royal family and the Grey Iron Duchy will not dare to openly turn against me. Your position as Duke will be stable for at least half a year. But after half a year, I can't guarantee that the Eagle royal family will not act in private. Even the Grey Iron family may cooperate with the Eagle royal family." Piero could use Liszt's name to return to his country and continue to be a duke. However, this could not change his crime of losing the dragon. He was still the sinner of the Grey Iron family and the Grey Iron Duchy. Moreover, with his secret defection and Liszt's verbal protection, the Eagle royal family and the Grey Iron family must have guessed how many benefits Piero promised Liszt. For this kind of betrayal of the duchy and the suzerain, even his son would want to eat his flesh and blood raw. So Liszt wondered if Piero could live for more than half a year. The so-called 20 years of protection was just a comfort, more of an excuse to start a war. Piero smiled confidently, "Your Highness, I am not as great and strong as you. Even my son expects me to die in a foreign country. But I am not alone. The dragon family in the Eagle Kingdom who is on good terms with me will help me through the difficulties." "It's good that you are confident. 20 years. I hope I can live to see His Highness conquer the 3 kingdoms and unify the northeast corner of the legendary continent. Maybe I won't live to see that day, but my grandson will definitely be able to see it." "Grandson?" Liszt raised his eyebrows and didn't say anything. He guessed that Piero would kill his son when he returned. Anyway, with his grandson around, it didn't matter whether he had a son or not. After meeting Duke Piero, he quickly announced that he was summoning the emissary delegation of the Eagle Kingdom. The leader of the emissary group was an acquaintance, Alexander White Iron. After a series of formalities, the ransom was directly traded in the main hall of Thorn Castle. Liszt left the details to his father, Lee William, and focused on the deal with the dragon spirits. According to the rules, the dragon elves that the Eagle royal family used as ransom had to be grain or magic potions, and their age could not exceed 200 years. Dragon elves could only live for 500 years. If the Eagle royal family sent a dragon elf that was more than 400 years old, Liszt would definitely lose his temper. It's called Atlantis. 120 years ago, it evolved into a dragon elf. It has been working hard to farm buckwheat for the Eagle royal family. The Eagle King endured the pain and gave it to the Fire King, Alexander said in a low voice as if he was unwilling to accept the humiliation. Beside him stood a slender little man in a small frac habit, dressed like a nobleman. However, the little person's head was crystal white, and there was a cluster of light pink flowers on his head. It was a buckwheat dragon elf. At this time, the buckwheat dragon elf Atlantis was looking at Liszt with a pair of big crystal eyes, and there was a human-like sadness and anxiety on his face. It had cancelled the elf contract with the Eagle King, but it had lived in the Eagle Kingdom for more than 100 years, and it had left a deep impression on it. After several days of persuasion from the Eagle King, it finally agreed to be the ransom and go to the Fire Kingdom to start a new life. However, during the voyage, it was always in low spirits, and even the light pink flowers on its head seemed a little dull. It was not looking forward to a new life at all. It just wanted to go back to the past, to go back to the carefree life in the Eagle royal family, where there were familiar people and familiar houses. However, it had to cheer up a little and look at the human in front of it who was about to contract with it. From the elf's aesthetic point of view, the human in front of it seemed to be pleasing to the eye. At least he was not ugly. His facial features were well proportioned, his left and right face were symmetrical, and his body was straight. His eyes were as bright as the stars, releasing a look that made it feel good. In short, the first impression was not bad, but it was not very good either. After all, it was very resistant to the changes that had come. At the same time, Liszt was also looking at Atlantis. He guessed that the Eagle royal family would send this buckwheat dragon elf. Piero, the traitor, had already presented the information of the Eagle royal family to him, including information about the dragon elves of the Eagle royal family. Among them, the buckwheat dragon elf was the most suitable. First of all, buckwheat was classified as a type of grain, and the buckwheat dragon elf met the requirements of a grain. Second, the age of the buckwheat dragon elf was not more than 200 years old, which met Liszt's age requirement. Finally, Buckwheat was a relatively low-value type among all the grains. Buckwheat had the word wheat in its name, but it had nothing to do with wheat. Wheat was a monocotyledon plant of the family Gramineae. Buckwheat was a dicotyledon plant, which was related to Polygonum multiflorum, and had triangular seeds. In this world, buckwheat was not as good as grains such as barley and wheat, whether in terms of yield or nutritional value. However, there was one good thing about buckwheat, which was that it was not delicate and easy to serve. It could grow as long as it was sprinkled in the field. Sometimes, even without the influence of cordyceps, it could still produce good yields. Atlantis, welcome to the Fire Kingdom. I am List Flame, the king here, the master of the sea and the knight of many dragons. From now on, you and I will be partners. The Flame family welcomes you to join us. I believe you will like it here. He reached out his hand, not to stuff it into Atlantis' mouth, but to shake hands with it. The dragon elf already had the intelligence of an adult and understood a lot of things, so he had to treat it as an equal. Atlantis hesitated for a moment before reaching out its small hand and shaking hands with List. Then, shall we make a contract? List immediately raised his hand and extended an index finger. Atlantis was conflicted. It could feel List's friendliness and remembered the request of the Eagle King, but it still did not want to change. At this time, List glanced at Alexander. Alexander immediately felt a substantial and heavy pressure on him. He hurriedly said, Atlantis, please make a contract with His Majesty the Fire King. Don't hesitate anymore. Didn't His Majesty the Eagle King already tell you that you have to accept a new life? Atlantis lowered its head and was silent for a moment. Then it grabbed List's outstretched hand with both of its hands, opened its mouth reluctantly and bit List's finger. Blood seeped out of the fingertip, and in an instant, there was a wonderful reaction with Atlantis' teeth. A mysterious and wonderful feeling emerged in its and List's hearts. Chapter 952. The Buckwheat Great Sprite, Atlantis, changed its name to Yadi and officially settled in Inferno Island. It was located in the buckwheat plantation near Fire City. The plantation had already been under construction before Yadi came because List had obtained a few buckwheat sprite worms. However, after the contract, Yadi was somewhat silent. Her mood remained gloomy. The first time she met the man-eating tree dragon sprite Carly in Fire Castle, she had been humiliated by Carly. In short, it was, nobody wants a sprite, little one be more obedient, can't even speak serpentine, trash if you have the ability, plant potions too. Fortunately, Yadi didn't understand serpentine and didn't understand what Carly said. After being reprimanded by List, Carly didn't continue making things difficult for Yadi. She didn't stay in Fire Castle for long and often went out. Carly, who had earth escape magic, often led a group of man-eating trees on expeditions in search of new species of man-eating trees to generate income for List. Her combat strength wasn't strong, but her life preservation skills were top-notch. After List tried to dissuade her several times to no avail, he let it be. Yadi, what activities do you usually like to do? Playing the piano. Oh, is that so? I also like to play the piano. If I wasn't busy with work, I might have become a master pianist. What can you play? Yadi wasn't very interested. I can play a lot. Have you heard of To Alice? Yes, I can play it. List chuckled. This piano piece was performed by an unknown pianist when I was young. Later, I revised and polished it, and the final score was decided upon. I didn't expect it to reach the Eagle Kingdom in just a few years. Yadi said in surprise, you really can play the piano. When I have time, I'll teach you a few new piano pieces. They're all composed by me and haven't been disseminated to the public yet, List said. After riding a dragon, his memory had greatly improved. Many of the piano pieces he had heard in his previous life appeared in his mind. With a little polish, it would be a classic, but after all, he was busy with official business and did not have time to organize his own book, List Piano Music Collection. He was still sorting out his creations, and all that was left was List Dragon Knight Training Manual, which covered all the experience of training on dragon riding. This was a masterpiece that would become the heirloom of the Blaze family. It had to be treated seriously. With the topic of playing the piano, List successfully eliminated the unfamiliarity between him and Yadi. However, he didn't have the time to chat with Yadi all day. After preparing a piano room and a set of piano scores for Yadi, he hurriedly left Fire Castle. He first went to check on Emily's dragon riding progress. Not much progress. However, the Emerald Dragon Ethan did not show any disgust towards Emily, which meant that she still had a good chance of riding the dragon. Now you have to manage the mammoth orders of chivalry, take care of the blizzard beast, and insist on practicing with the dragon. Do you feel tired? Your Highness, I'm not tired at all. Spending time with Ethan is relaxing for me. Well, riding a dragon isn't something that can be achieved overnight. You have to be prepared for a protracted battle. List reached out and patted Emily on the shoulder, causing a faint blush to flash across the girl's face. When she was a little girl, List liked to pat her on the shoulder like this. As Emily grew up, aristocratic etiquette became more and more strict. It had been a long time since List patted her on the shoulder so intimately. She raised her head, her bright eyes sparkling. Please rest assured, Your Highness. The September sun had gradually weakened, and the climate of Flame Island was about to usher in the drought of autumn and winter. Crops stopped growing and food began to be scarce. Even with a steady stream of food from the Flame Territory and Oxtail Territory, it still couldn't keep up with the increasing number of serfs. In the past few months, List's Orders of Chivalry and Lee Williams' Orders of Chivalry were constantly incorporating the Moon Killer indigenous tribes. 1/3 of the forests in the southeastern part of Flame Island had been visited by the Orders of Chivalry, incorporating a total of 1.2 million Moon Killer serfs. Fortunately, the number of Flame people had reached 300,000, which was enough to manage the Moon Killer people. In order to show his support for his son's founding, Lee William didn't develop his fief Tulip Island on a large scale. Instead, he handed over most of the family's Orders of Chivalry to List to support the development of Flame Island. He was very clear that the better Flame Island was developed, the more beneficial it would be for the development of the surrounding islands. A prosperous market on a large island was far more prosperous than a small island. Most importantly, he and List had reached an agreement: plundering was better than farming. The Eagle Kingdom launched a dragon-slaying war against me, trying to kill me. I have to take revenge for this. Moreover, the Eagle Kingdom has never apologized to me or compensated me for my losses. The buckwheat dragon spirits are ransom, not compensation. If they don't pay, I'll take it myself. List, the Fire Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom have signed an agreement prohibiting dragon-level battles. We may not be able to do much by relying on the night level alone, Lee William, the Oxtail Marquis, said. He was still the Oxtail Marquis of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, and List still held the title of Marquis of Flame. Before the Fire Kingdom officially announced its founding, these titles would be retained for the time being. Although I've signed an agreement with the Eagle Kingdom, the Sapphire family hasn't. This time, the Sapphire Grand Duke will launch the development order, and our Orders of Chivalry will be under the Sapphire banner. In addition, let the Sapphire Dragon go out to plunder, and I'll secretly contain the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom. Lee William didn't object. That's good. Thus, the father and son quickly went to the Blue Sky Mountain Palace to find the Sapphire Grand Duke to discuss the war. Only a few months had passed, but the Sapphire Grand Duke had aged into an old man in his 70s or 80s. His breath was seriously weak, especially on the spiritual level, which was particularly serious. Grand Duke Andrew, how is your body? It seems that I can no longer hide it. Your Majesty, I don't have much time. I'm afraid I'll have to hand Sapphire to Anthony soon. The Grand Duke sighed and said, Originally, I thought I could hold on for a few years to pave the way for Anthony. Now, I can only pin my hopes on your Highness. Grand Duke, please speak. I'll definitely help if I can. Your Majesty should still remember the dragon-slaying incident that year. The Marquis of Bull rebelled and assassinated the Sapphire Dragon. He used a vicious soul magic to tear the soul of the Sapphire Dragon. In order to save the life of the Sapphire Dragon, I had to overdraw my soul to maintain the Sapphire Dragon. However, the human soul was much weaker than the soul of a dragon. The Sapphire Grand Duke had long been exhausted. 2 years have passed, and I still haven't found a way to repair the soul of the Sapphire Dragon. Andy is imprisoned in the dungeon by me, but all kinds of experiments can't cut open the fused dragon soul and return it to the Sapphire Dragon. I can only choose to let Anthony continue to repair the Sapphire Dragon on my behalf after I die. I'm afraid that's not the way. What if Anthony can't repair it? List frowned and asked. Chapter 953. Though I die, there will be children, and children will give birth to grandchildren, and grandchildren will give birth to more children, and 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 more children. The Sapphire Grand Duke's firm answer moved List. He wanted to use the lives of all the males in the family to ensure the life of the sapphire dragon, thereby preserving the status of the dragon-raising family. Perhaps any noble would make the same choice. The dragon-rearing families were the true players in the game of the knight system, not pawns. However, Liszt looked at the wrinkles on the Grand Duke's face and muttered, "Is Lich Andy locked up in the dungeon?" Hatred flashed in his eyes as he replied, "That's right, I didn't kill him." "How much research have you done on the convenience of souls, especially on the content of liches and dragon lords? How many valuable results have you obtained?" "I've researched it countless times but to no avail. Even the transformation of a lich cannot be reversed. Andy relied on a divine artifact passed down from ancient times to complete the final transformation. As for the Lord of Dragon City, it has always been a legend. There is no way to achieve it. I remember more than 100 years ago, there was a great wizard called Kurdish Truth who seemed to want to help a member of the Sapphire family become the Dragon Domain Lord. This story is not a secret, but there is a slight deviation from the outside world. That madwoman Curtis never mastered the technique of the Dragon Domain Lord. She intended to turn Annette into a lich from the beginning. The three kingdoms all know about this, otherwise they would have taken action long ago. It was precisely because her lich research was grasped by Andy that she started the rebellion." Sapphire Grand Duke's reply disappointed Liszt. He had thought that he would be able to obtain the Dragon City Lord's technique from Sapphire Grand Duke. After thinking about it carefully, he said, "In fact, you should have contacted me earlier instead of studying a way to save the Sapphire Dragon alone. You should know that magic shooters represent true magic. Even if soul magic is given to magic shooters to study, it would not be too difficult." The Grand Duke smiled awkwardly. He dared not hand the Sapphire Dragon over to Liszt and a chief for research. What if it never came back? Wouldn't it be more tragic than now? He seemed to have seen through Sapphire Grand Duke's worries. Liszt said, "Speaking of which, I originally had a deal that I was prepared to talk about after some time. Why don't I say it now? I went to the legendary continent some time ago and met Andy's grandson, Andre, who was attacking an orichalcum dragon. He was almost successful." "What?" Sapphire Grand Duke almost jumped up. Anthony, who was serving at the side, was so agitated that he accidentally broke the teacup. "Your Majesty, where is Andre now?" Both of them placed their attention on Andre and neglected the main point that Liszt wanted to talk about, the orichalcum dragon. The orichalcum dragon was a mystical dragon that should have been the most shocking. He gestured with his hand and said, "Don't be impatient. Andre dared to snatch my dragon, so naturally he will be caught by me. I've been preparing to give him to Grand Duke Andrew as a birthday present, and in exchange for some information regarding the Dragon City Lord. If the Grand Duke can't wait, I'll send him over next time. Your Majesty, please be sure to send Andre over. I don't have any information on the Dragon City Lord, but I'm willing to immediately offer all the information I've researched on souls." "Of course, but are you sure you don't need me to hire a magic shooter to research and repair the soul of the Sapphire Dragon?" This, Grand Duke Andrew hesitated, but Anthony, who had finally calmed down, said directly, "Father, what are you hesitating for? We are all followers of His Majesty. Isn't it right to ask His Majesty and His Excellency Achilles to heal the Sapphire Dragon?" He did not want to die early, and when he heard that Liszt had snatched another orichalcum dragon, he completely realized that his Sapphire Dragon might really be nothing in the eyes of the other party. After all, the other party had the invisible dragon of the holy dragons and the orichalcum dragon of the magical metal dragons. The value of any one of these dragons was far greater than the half-crippled Sapphire Dragon. Seeing Anthony's attitude, Sapphire Grand Duke finally sighed and said, "Then I'll have to trouble your Majesty and His Excellency Achilles to heal the Sapphire Dragon. Just tell me what you need. The Sapphire family is willing to spend all our wealth to heal the damaged soul of the Sapphire Dragon. Maybe it's not as difficult to heal as you think. In short, the cost of the treatment must be paid by the Sapphire family, but I can waive the service fee." The treatment of the Sapphire Dragon was determined. Liszt then began to ask about the purpose of this visit. "Grand Duke Andrew, can you still support a battle now, or can Anthony bring the Sapphire Dragon to participate in the battle?" "What does your Majesty mean?" "I'm going to launch a development order against the Eagle Kingdom in the name of Sapphire. I'll contain the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom, and the Sapphire Dragon will cooperate with the Knight to plunder, mainly to plunder the population. The development of the Flame Islands requires too many human resources. I can no longer ride the dragon to battle, but as long as I don't die for the time being, the Sapphire Dragon will have full combat power and can cooperate with Anthony to fight a development order war. Then set a time. It's September now. Without further ado, the development order will be launched in early October. As you wish. After Liszt sent Andre over, the Sapphire family quickly packed up the organized soul-related research materials and gave them back to Liszt. The Grand Duke Andrew, leaning on his cane, personally escorted Andre to the depths of the dungeon, letting Andre reunite with Marquis Bull. Andy, I'm a man of my word. Sooner or later, I'll let you meet grandfather and grandson. Now is the time to fulfill my promise. Didn't you say that Andre will help you get everything you want? He's already here, so what about the thing you want? Sapphire Grand Duke laughed. Although his body was getting worse, it did not hinder his current excitement. On the contrary, when Marquis Bull, who had always been calm, saw the pale but fat Andre, his eyes flashed with blue flames. Andre? Grandfather? Andre, who had eaten too much junk food, had lost most of his chi. He had already become a little fatty. At first he was startled, but then he lowered his head in shame. I'm sorry, grandfather. Andre has also become a captive. I wasn't able to realize the rise of the family, and I wasn't able to realize grandfather's dream. A few months of captivity had already worn away all his hopes. The once high-spirited and talented youngster had become a decadent waste. How could this be? Weren't you attacking? How did you end up in this state? Marquis Bull asked anxiously. Andre suddenly prostrated himself on the ground and cried, I don't know, I was ambushed by a dragon knight, and the mountain copper dragon was snatched away by the other party. Everything is over, grandfather. Marquis Bull trembled as he sat on the chair, constantly repeating, How could this be? How could this be? Grand Duke Andrew laughed heartily. Delightful, it's the first time in so many years that I'm so happy. Andy, it's really funny to see you like this. You wanted to snatch everything from the Sapphire family, but you lost everything. Do you feel despair? Do you regret it? Regret? No, how could I regret it? Andy roared, Why have I been the one to serve you since you were young? Why? We are all descendants of the first Sapphire Dragon Knight. Why am I your servant? Why can you ride a dragon but I have to smile along with you? Grand Duke Andrew sneered, Because this is fate. Some people are born to be a cut above others. Ah, what a joke. You think you are a cut above others, but in fact, you are just a maggot bred on the body of a dragon. Your talent is no match for mine, and Andre is even more outstanding than all your children. Marquis Bull stood up, his body expanding and shrinking along with the trembling of the blue flames. He stared at Grand Duke Andrew and said word by word, Although I failed, you did not succeed either. The pain of your soul being torn apart will accompany you until you die, and the Sapphire Dragon is also destined to die. You and the family behind you will be buried with me. Do you really think so? Grand Duke Andrew suddenly felt that the other party was very ridiculous and very pitiful. The pleasure of revenge had not dissipated. Unfortunately, you are just a delusional lunatic and I know a magic shooter. She will help the Sapphire family cure the soul damage of the Sapphire Dragon. With that, he no longer paid attention to the roaring Marquis Bull. Chapter 954. Lich Andy was transported to the Reed Tower in Reed City. In order to study the teleportation circle, a Chi used Earth Elemental embodiment, which she had yet to master perfectly, to create a tall stone tower. She then asked the construction team to decorate the interior of the tower into a magnificent mage tower that was hundreds of meters tall. She named it the Reed Tower. At this moment, in a closed laboratory in the Reed Tower, Liszt was watching a Chi set up a magic circle. At the center of the magic circle was the tall Lich Andy, who was tightly bound by orichalcum chains. Right now he could only be considered a humanoid creature. His body was covered by a special metal armor that had completely fused with his body and soul. According to the information provided by the Sapphire Grand Duke, Andy used a mysterious armor called Scar of Fear, to fuse with the soul of a dragon and transform into a lich. The Scar of Fear had completely fused with Andy's body and changed its nature. It was impossible to know what it was made of. However, Liszt speculated that the raw material should be related to dragons. After all, the world's top materials were dragon parts. Among the 4 pieces of equipment he found in the statue, 3 of them were made of dragon materials. Moreover, to perfectly fuse with the soul of a dragon, dragon materials were obviously the most suitable armor. Chi, do you think it'll be easier to remove the soul if we remove the Scar of Fear from his body first? I'm not sure yet, But from Achi's observation, the scar of fear has already become the Lich's body carrier. As time goes by, his body is gradually fusing with the scar of fear. I'm afraid that he'll become a real Lich soon. A real Lich? Does that mean he's not a Lich yet? A semi-finished product. Achi gave a simple evaluation. The workmanship is rough and the transformation process should be flawed. According to the legends that Achi read in the magic books, the ancient Lich was also called the Lich King. It was developed by magic shooters. Can't be so fragile. She condensed a ring of water and wrapped it around Andy's arm. She squeezed it slightly, and the armor was immediately deformed. Look, brother. It's really fragile. List nodded. Yes, it is. Lying in the magic circle and unable to move, the blue flames in Andy's eyes trembled violently. Unable to bear it any longer, he said in a low, hoarse voice, "Are you the Dragon Knight and magic shooter that Andrew mentioned?" "That's right." Lich Andy stared at List's face and asked with a trembling voice, "Are you the one who stole my grandson Andre's orichalcum dragon?" List smiled and replied with a slightly teasing tone, "Dragons are arrogant by nature. They will only acknowledge the most outstanding human beings. Your grandson probably isn't good enough." He didn't gain anything from the Copper Mountain Dragon for a few years, but I only went for a day and the Copper Mountain Dragon willingly became my mount. After hearing his words, Lich Andy seemed to want to say something, but he didn't say anything in the end. Instead, he stiffly changed the topic. "This high mage isn't human, right? A spirit of the sea. A siren? It's actually a siren high mage. Did Andrew ask Sir High Mage for help to research a way to cure the Sapphire Dragon? Healing the Sapphire Dragon is just a side project. We want to study more about the soul, so Lich Andy, I hope you can cooperate with us. The sooner you get the results, the less pain you'll have to suffer. Perhaps when I send you to the Banished Land, you'll still be able to see your grandson." "I'm an immortal Lich. There is no such thing as immortal. If there was, where did the ancient Liches go? Moreover, you aren't a qualified product." List didn't have anything to do today, so he had time to chat with Andy. He wanted to see if he could loosen the other side's mood and make him take the initiative to cooperate with the research. After a short moment, Lich Andy was in the mood to chat again. "You want to research liches? How about we also make a deal?" "Let's hear it." "I'll take the initiative to cooperate with the research and rely on my dragon soul to make the Sapphire Dragon your dragon. I'll destroy the Sapphire family and give you all the wealth, but I only want you to guarantee Andre's freedom to leave the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. I'd like to agree and let you cooperate with the research, but my integrity doesn't allow me to deceive others. The Sapphire Grand Duke is a decisive person. He won't leave Andre alive to torture him because of hatred. In fact, he will only send Andre to the Banished Land early." "That's true. I know Andre's character very well. Then I only need you to guarantee the destruction of the Sapphire family. How about it?" List still wanted to talk a little more with Lich Andy. Achi, who was immersed in her research, suddenly said, "Brother, Achi has discovered the secret of the Lich. It seems that the dragon soul is easy to separate, and the structure of his body isn't difficult to grasp. Because it's a semi-finished product, a lot of the design ideas are exposed on his body." "Oh, so easy?" "Sapphire has provided a lot of information, plus Achi has recently collected a batch of information about souls. It's not difficult to see the secret of a semi-finished Lich. If nothing goes wrong, as long as there are suitable materials, Achi can also mass-produce this kind of semi-finished Lich." "Impossible!" Lich Andy exclaimed in a trembling voice. Achi's words ruthlessly shattered Andy's hope of getting lucky. He's a knight transformed into a Lich. His spiritual power is insufficient, and there are many barriers in the fusion with the dragon soul. It's not accurate to say that he's a semi-finished product. It should be an inferior semi-finished product. Mages are the best candidates to transform into liches. Without any bargaining value, Lich Andy was destined to be a lab rat. List did not let Achi immediately take the glass dragon soul. He was not ready to heal the Sapphire Dragon so quickly. Perhaps it was hypocritical, but as the future king of the Fire Kingdom, from a political point of view, a dead Grand Duke Andrew was more in line with his interests. The successor Anthony would be easier to control, and once Grand Duke Andrew died, the identity of the followers of the Tulip family would also become a thing of the past. Without the moral constraints of the identity of a former follower, he could make arrangements for the Sapphire family without any constraints. "After all, I've become a member of this world's politicians, and like most nobles, I only see benefits. Liszt rarely looked at himself under the lazy afternoon sun. But this feeling did not last long. In the letter, Paris reported that the Phoenix forest had attracted a flock of red-feathered birds in World of Warcraft. It seemed that it was not an ordinary low-level World of Warcraft. They occupied the Phoenix forest and even had several conflicts with the flame drakes. Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple, the three gradually maturing flame drakes, did not take advantage of this group of red-feathered birds in World of Warcraft. There was even one time when Little Purple fought a red bird alone, and it only ended in a draw. The combat power of these three birds is already at the level of advanced World of Warcraft. Doesn't that mean that these red-feathered birds in World of Warcraft are all at the level of advanced World of Warcraft? Chapter 955. The Phoenix Parasol Forest was still composed of small saplings and was not lush and verdant, but under the influence of the worm stalk, each tree was full of vigor. The red-feathered birds that were attracted were the size of a calf, but their wingspans were only about 5 meters. They were fat and bloated, looking like some kind of large sparrow. Liszt found from the invisible dragon's crystal white trajectory that their magic power was at the advanced World of Warcraft level, and there were about 100 of these birds. They shuttled back and forth between the Phoenix Parasol tree saplings in groups. Fortunately, they did not destroy the saplings, only occasionally breaking a few while playing. There was no record of similar bird-type magical beasts in the Encyclopedia of Magical Beasts revised by Achi, so Liszt temporarily named them as cardinals. Your Highness, these birds have been here for a while, and our serfs dare not plant trees. These birds will attack the serfs when they see them. Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple are also not their match, said Paris. I will teach these cardinals a lesson. In my territory they are my personal property, and I will not allow them to be so presumptuous. However, Liszt did not immediately subdue this flock of cardinals. The reason was the smoke mission. The previous mission required him to plant Phoenix Parasol trees to attract birds, but with the arrival of these cardinals, the smoke mission did not change and was still in an incomplete state. In other words, the number of birds might not be up to standard. It was likely that there would be more fire-attributed birds coming. Liszt had already figured out the pattern of the smoke mission, so he was not in a hurry and let Paris restrain the knight and serfs here first. Liszt went to the distant crater of Mount Doomsday to meet Leo for training, and he brought Ainfant, the Phoenix Parasol Tree Great Elf, with him. Ainfant, who held the Fire Dragon scale all day, was in a good mood recently, but there were still no signs of evolving into a dragon elf. Of course it did not fail and it was still full of love for Leo. Ethan has graduated from his training, and now I have to do my best to graduate Leo's training as well. Otherwise, I will never be able to control this Fire Dragon. He treated Fire Dragon Leo as a combat partner, and he hoped that Leo could leave a soul imprint on him as soon as possible so that he could develop the armor form. A handsome set of flame armor was Liszt's long-awaited dream. The Bone Dragon armor was very domineering, but its aura was dark and strange, which was somewhat in conflict with his sunny personality. Roar! Leo asked for red cologne every time they met. His body grew even bigger. More than a dozen active volcanoes in the endless volcano cluster were fully absorbed by it, and a few of them were almost extinguished. The remaining ones also looked like they were going to hibernate. For this, Leo had to go deeper into the magma to look for the Volcano Supreme Demon. But through the heart and soul connection, Liszt noticed that the deeper he went into the magma, the fewer Volcano Supreme Demons there were. In Leo's memory, the magma there lacked magic power, and it couldn't dive deeper even in its magic form. Eat, eat, eat. It's so hard to feed you. Liszt reluctantly took out a bottle of red dragon water and stuffed it into Leo's big mouth. Among all the dragons, Leo was the most dependent on and needed magic potions. Although the other dragons couldn't live without magic potions, they only needed to maintain the necessary supply of magic power. They didn't need magic power to promote their growth. Magic power was more like 3 meals a day. After entering the dragon's body, it was digested and finally turned into special dragon magic power to infect and produce mineral resources. The invisible dragon bard was even more special. Its space gems were rarely produced and had to be condensed by supreme demons. Its ordinary dragon magic power couldn't produce minerals. It was mainly used to travel through space and resonate with the physical boundary and the world outside of it. Leo was the only one who could eat as many magic potions as he could. He didn't produce anything and just kept growing. I have to communicate with the Red and White Rose family as soon as possible and ask them to send me a batch of red cologne. But this isn't a long-term plan. After all, the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family is among them. The Platinum family won't let the red cologne flow to me. It's best if I can find new volcanoes. There were no new volcanoes in the Flame Archipelago. Although there were volcanoes on the other islands, there was no exposed magma. Unless the volcanoes erupted, it was hard to see magma even if they found an active volcano. He cultivated until the sky turned dark. Just as List returned to the Phoenix Parasol Forest, Paris quickly reported, "Your Highness, after you left, another group of red sparrows arrived. Moreover, there are actually 5 flame dragon birds among them. They are the same type of dragon birds as Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple." What? List was shocked. Flame dragon birds were mounts that he had always wanted to capture and tame. Unfortunately, there were many legends about phoenixes, but there were almost none that had actually been discovered. He never thought that planting a parasol tree would actually attract golden phoenixes. He quickly cast Crystal White Orbit and sized up the Phoenix Parasol Forest. Soon he discovered that among the red magic power, there were 5 more brightly colored magic power. They had already entered the high magic level. It was indeed a flame dragon bird. 4 large flame dragon birds in pairs and 1 small flame dragon bird is alone. His eyes lit up. Capture, I must capture them. Let them breed with Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple, and provide an endless supply of flame dragon bird mounts for my guard orders of chivalry. Of course, capturing didn't have to be violent. With Infant, a great elf who was close to flame dragon birds and understood bird language, he might be able to take a shortcut. Moreover, there was also a fire dragon that represented the extreme power of flames. Taming a flame dragon bird would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. Thinking of this, he summoned the smoke mission. This time the mission had changed. Mission completed. Reward, a flock of red sparrows. In a flash, new serpentines condensed. Mission. The appearance of the red sparrows indicates that the Phoenix Parasol Forest is attractive to fire-type birds. However, there are flame dragon birds mixed in the flock of red sparrows. The relationship between the flock of birds is worth investigating. However, Leo seems to have discovered something. Why not check it out? Reward, mysterious creature. After reading the content of the mission, List unconsciously frowned. This mission was incoherent. It was clearly 2 completely unrelated content. The first half was still talking about the relationship between flame dragon birds and red sparrows. The second half jumped directly to Leo. He quickly contacted Leo using the Dragonheart code. After waiting for a while, Leo responded. A vague thought seemed to be that it had found a strange place in the depths of the volcano. There was a passage without magma, and there was a deep attraction coming from the depths of the passage. It was probably the unknown creature reward of the smoke mission. Even if it tried to rush into the passage, its magic power form couldn't leave the magma. If it turned into flesh and blood, the magma passage would be too narrow. It was in a dilemma. Chapter 956. In order to get what was attracting it to the magma underground, Leo finally agreed to start training in the form of armor with List. So in late September, List was stationed in the endless volcanoes for a long time. After a good run-in with the bone dragon Winnie, he had a deep understanding of the training of the elemental dragon armor form. As long as Leo was willing to cooperate, it should be very easy to train. Moreover, Leo's control over himself was far greater than Winnie's control over the bone dragon, so it might be easier. But no matter how easy it was, it still took time to train. At the same time, the orders of chivalry began to gather on Flame Island. The Earth Knight who had passed the political review gathered on Ironhoof Island through the Shinlu teleportation array. They were about to cooperate with the Sapphire Dragon to launch the Eagle Kingdom's expedition. In the Phoenix Forest, the great elf Infant was busy riding Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple slowly approaching the 5 Inferno Dragon Birds. Unlike the Cardinal's hostility, when the Inferno Dragon Birds saw their own kind, they acted more affectionately and did not show a confrontational posture. Infant also took this opportunity to establish a preliminary friendly relationship with the 5 new Inferno Dragon Birds. The Inferno Dragon Birds were the kings of the Cardinals. About 200 or 300 Cardinals needed to hunt wild birds from all over the world for the Inferno Dragon Birds to enjoy. This relationship was like the class difference between the Storm Draconic Horse and the Pegasus. However, no matter how precious and rare the Inferno Dragon Birds were, List did not have the time to pay attention to them. His and Leo's training had encountered serious obstacles. No matter how Leo cooperated, the armor form he condensed could not do what List wanted. It was just a ball of flames surrounding List. Staring at himself wrapped in gelatinous flames, so bloated that it was somewhat inconvenient for him to move, he sighed silently. What was thought to be a simple training had become a huge problem. Roar! Leo also looked very impatient. It could not transform into a beautiful set of armor according to List's idea. Moreover, it suspected that List was fooling it. This method was not feasible at all. It was purely a waste of its dragon magic. It's not that you can't, it's that you can't control the form of your magic power. List shook his head. I seriously suspect that your strength is rapidly increasing, but you still haven't completely mastered your own body. You're only 4 years old, but you already look like you're 40 years old. Oh. Leo felt that his innate talent could not be measured by age. I think you should just transform into a dragon spear. With your current level of control, you can probably transform into a dragon spear. List thought so in his heart, and so did his actions. Leo reluctantly cooperated. However, to List's surprise, Leo quickly condensed into a 10-meter-long fire dragon spear. The body of the spear was dark red and shiny like a piece of red-hot iron. It was slightly distorted, and one could vaguely see a pair of abstract dragon wings attached to it. The tip of the spear was formed by the tail of a fire dragon and was covered with dragon scales. The end of the spear was in the shape of Leo's dragon head and had a few sharp dragon horns. Holding the spear, he felt that this dragon spear was like an extension of his body. Its size, length, and weight were all natural and smooth to him. Oh. This feeling is power. Leo, although you failed to transform into armor, you succeeded in transforming into a dragon spear. I can feel that the dragon spear you transformed into is definitely the most powerful dragon spear in the world. Leo's roar came from his mind. He longed for battle. Very well, as you wish. List called out, and the skull and dragon head pattern on his face immediately spread to his whole body, condensing into a set of bone dragon armor. Winnie's voice sounded in his mind, Your Highness, do you need me to transform into a bone dragon sword? I already have the fire dragon spear. List grabbed the fire dragon spear and put on the bone dragon armor. He leaped, and the bone dragon wings on his back spread out. Although he couldn't fan the air, he could increase his momentum. When he reached a high altitude, the invisible dragon bard suddenly flew over and caught him. He sat down on the dragon tooth platform and entered dragon rider mode. As his thoughts spun, Bard folded his wings and dove toward the valley. Using the spear of rat halos in conjunction with the secret technique of the dragon's battle energy, a flaming meteor shot out from the tip of the spear like a meteor falling from the sky, instantly blasting toward the valley. There was a loud noise. A huge explosion occurred in the valley. The entire valley and the surrounding mountains shook violently. In the flames and dust, Bard quickly turned around, flapped his wings and rushed out of the range of the explosion. After flying a few rounds in the sky and waiting for the thick smoke and dust to disperse, List saw the effect of his powerful attack. A meteorite pit with a diameter of 20 meters appeared on the ground. Powerful. This is power. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ah. Affected by his mood, 3 voices sounded in his mind at the same time. Oh. Your Highness is so powerful. Wuxia. Although he was powerful, he still had to solve the problem. Leo still couldn't transform into an armor. Because of this, List had to change his way of thinking and no longer force him to transform into an armor. Instead, he let Leo wrap him up perfectly, and then Leo drove him forward in the magma. After practicing for nearly 10 days, he finally formed a perfect combination with Leo and tried to dive into the magma in the state that was now named Flame Wrap. To ensure safety, he first tested it bit by bit to make sure that the magma wouldn't burn him through the flame wrap. Only then did he truly enter the volcano of Doomsday. Under Leo's guidance, he quickly dived into the tumbling magma and went straight down the tunnel. With Leo's perception, he could feel that the surroundings were filled with fire magic. He swam in it like a fish in water, easily and freely. However, as he dived deeper, the stagnation became stronger and stronger. When he felt that he couldn't hold on any longer, Leo finally turned and led List into the U-shaped magma tunnel at the side of the tunnel, and gradually spiraled upward. A moment later, they had already reached the end of the magma. Whoosh! The flame wrap rushed out of the magma and jumped into a red dry tunnel. The flame wrap quickly retreated, and Leo once again attached to his chest in his totem form, magic form. Is this the place? List held his breath and carefully looked at the tunnel. With the red magma as a light source, the tunnel wasn't dark. However, after a few turns they were getting further and further away from the magma, and the light gradually dimmed. He took out the hand magic tube, shone the light from the crystal lamp, and carefully moved forward along the tunnel, looking for something that attracted Leo. The hint of the smoke mission was an unknown creature. A creature that could live here was definitely extraordinary, so List had to be as careful as possible to avoid being killed by an unknown creature. They walked for a full 5 minutes. At the end of the tunnel, there was a flashing red light in front of him. It looks like there's a cave there. It should be the nest of an unknown creature. Winnie, armor form. Understood, Your Highness. Bone Dragon Winnie quickly turned into a set of bone dragon armor and extended a bone dragon sword, which was held in List's hand. With the protection of the armor, he felt much safer. After dawdling for a moment, he finally walked along the tunnel to the entrance of the glowing cave. Looking inside, he was shocked. The cave was like a huge spherical space. The walls were glowing as if there were countless red gems decorating it. The most incredible thing was that at the bottom of the cave, there was a bird's nest made of firewood that was on fire. In the bird's nest, there was a glowing reddish-gold bird egg. The light that illuminated the cave came from this bird egg. In fact, rather than saying it was a bird egg, it was better to say that it was a glowing translucent gem. An extremely rich fire element magic lingered around it, making this bird egg look extremely noble. With one look, it was obvious that this was an egg laid by an extraordinary creature. The energy level is very high, it's a supreme fire element magic. What kind of creature left this egg? After confirming that there were no adult unknown creatures guarding the area, he slid down the wall and walked to the side of the bird egg. In fact, he couldn't be sure that it was a bird egg, but he was sure that it was indeed an egg with life. However, he was a little unwilling. Let me touch the phoenix egg before I leave. Thinking. He stretched out his hand and slowly stroked the mysterious golden stone-shaped egg the size of a football. When Zhang Xin's fingertips came into contact with the egg, he didn't get burned as he had imagined. Instead, he felt an emotion similar to a newborn chick's yearning for freedom. It was a kind of uplifting positivity. It was as if an eagle should fly above the 9 heavens, and a whale should swim in the vast ocean. It was a phoenix, and it should live freely in the mortal world. Life and death should be vigorous like a burning fire. Phoenix, you and I are fated. List instantly responded with his own emotion, and through his fingertips, he had some kind of special communication with the life in the egg. If you want to live a vigorous life, then follow me. My life is like my surname, Flame. The burning flame is destined to sweep the world. He didn't know if the life in the egg understood him, but he couldn't feel any new emotions. He only had a vague idea that if this egg wanted to hatch, it would need a vigorous volcanic eruption. Maybe the phoenix chose to be reborn here because it was waiting for the doomsday volcano to erupt one day in the future, and then it would be reborn from the fire. However, because of Leo, it kept absorbing the volcano supermana, and the doomsday volcano was almost half dormant. Don't worry, I will help you hatch it. After making his promise, List didn't hesitate anymore. He quickly left the cave and returned to the lava through the tunnel. Leo turned into a flame and quickly took him back to the outside of the volcano. Taking a breath of fresh air, List sat on a hot rock to recover his strength, and called out the smoke quest. Quest completed, reward, Phoenix Egg. It really is a phoenix egg. He showed a knowing smile. After a cheese unicorn Charlie, he was about to get another legendary creature, Phoenix. A moment later. New quest released, quest, 500 years for a cycle, wait for the right time to be reborn. This is the immortal bird Phoenix. Its noble character is indescribable, and its power is mysterious. Since you are fated to see the phoenix and wait for its rebirth, you naturally have to help it. Please hatch the phoenix egg. Reward, a phoenix. Without the smoke quest, List would also help the phoenix hatch. Now what List had to do was to persuade Leo to launch a volcanic eruption to meet the conditions for the phoenix egg to hatch. However, Leo was angry right now and List didn't let him eat the phoenix egg. He was very unhappy, and it was even more impossible to use the supreme mana to guide the volcanic eruption. Then let's wait first. The expansion order is coming. I have to take the dragons to the Eagle Kingdom to contain the other party's Dragon Knight. I'm afraid I don't have time to take care of the newly hatched phoenix. When the expansion order is over, I will hatch the phoenix egg. The phoenix egg was not suitable for hatching for the time being, but it did not prevent him from studying the blood-red stones in the phoenix nest. These were a few stones with strong fire attribute magic. The surface was rough and had many impurities. It was not as crystal clear as gems and crystals, nor as delicate and smooth as jade. The magic is a little difficult to extract and activate. It feels a little troublesome to study. Forget it, I'll just throw it to the Guild of Magic for research. His time was too precious to be used for research. Back to the Phoenix Forest. The great elf Ainfant's work was very good. He had successfully integrated with the 5 new flaming dragon birds and let the flaming dragon birds restrain these grumpy cardinals. List: the cardinals will not dare to attack humans in the future, or Ainfant will let the flaming dragon birds pluck their feathers. Well done. List was not stingy with his praise. Paris smiled and said, with Ainfant here to manage the flock, the safety of the knight and the serfs is guaranteed. There is no need for me to interfere anymore. Your Highness, please transfer me back to Reed City to contribute to the construction there. You are now a light magic great swordsman, and your strength belongs to the top of the knight. Leading the orders of chivalry is what you should do. However, don't participate in the construction of the territory for the time being. I am arranging for the orders of chivalry to go to the Eagle Kingdom. You should also join the expedition team and get promoted as soon as possible. Chapter 958. The majestic pioneering war finally kicked off at the beginning of October. The vast majority of the Sapphire Grand Duchy's fleets had already assembled and set off from the Ironhoof Island's Ironhoof City, carrying a large number of knights, towards the coastal hinterland of the Eagle Kingdom. There was no special timing or destination for the battle. List just felt that the coastal hinterland of the Kingdom of Eagle should be where there were more people and wealth. With the Sapphire Dragon leading the charge, there was no way to resist. The stubborn castle would be destroyed, and the Knight of the Kingdom of Eagle would still be captured. More noble lords seemed to know their ending, especially the lesser lords who chose to surrender and avoid the battle. Lee William was the chief commander of the Orders of Chivalry in the Fire Territory and Oxtail Territory. At his birthday party last month, List officially gave him the Combat Aura Secret Manual as a birthday gift. Although half a month was not enough for him to become a Domain Knight immediately, with his mount, Super World Warcraft, Black Albatross, his combat power could reach the level of a Domain Knight. Behind him were the light magic great swordsman Paris, the sword Saint Durut Red Apricot, and Cross Buckthorn. Even Emily, who was still getting used to Ethan, participated in the battle. She was also a sword saint, and she had suppressed Durut, Claus and the other sword saints. She had become a powerhouse second only to Lee William in the battle between the knights. In addition, List also sent 7 Sky Knights: Fox, Garcia, Derek Iron Armor, Joyce Dandelion, Speck, Vernal Ink and Tevis Alfalfa. These Sky Knight level powerhouses formed a luxurious attack line, and no one was a match for them. In order to prevent the Kingdom of Eagle from sending out the Dragon Knight to deal with the Grand Duchy of Sapphire's usual invasion, List personally led the luxurious Dragon Legion to secretly supervise the battle. Invisible Dragon Bard, Grey Iron Dragon Orn, Fire Dragon Leo, Bone Dragon Winnie, and Light Emerald Dragon Ethan. Only Marta the Copper Dragon stayed on Flame Island to guard the territory and prevent the Moon Killers from rebelling. Although most of the Moon Killers belonged to the Serf class, their living conditions were much better than in the forest. More importantly, List adopted the strategy of division. Although the original ancient sorcerers had to serve for the big project, their children had entered the school, received good education, and were promised to become nobles in the future, which also made them less motivated to rebel. Furthermore, the territory also has the magic shooter, a Chi riding a unicorn Charlie, whose strength is like the Dragon Knight. One person is enough to suppress everything. In short, the outcome of this pioneering order war was predetermined since the beginning. It lasted for a full month. The Sapphire Dragon crossed more than 1,000 kilometers in the hinterland of the Eagle Kingdom and conquered a large number of castles. The captured knight was transported in a steady stream in the direction of Sapphire, and the serfs were driven away in batches without even a fig leaf. Most of them would be sent to Blazing Island, with only a small portion serving as spoils of war for the Sapphire family, as well as a share of military exploits for other minor aristocrats. List, who has 6 dragons, does not mind becoming fat in one bite. The number of dragons is the hard truth. No matter how many captured knight came to the Fire Kingdom, they had to work here honestly and become the vassals of the Fire family. Preposterous. In the royal palace of Moonshine City, the Iron Dragon Chain Palace, Eagle King Adonis Moonlight Silver threw the wine glass in his hand on the ground. Looking at the information sent by the intelligence knight, the bearded man stood up in anger. How dare he do this? List, this little bastard, the second son raised by a despicable small family, how dare he provoke the Eagle Kingdom again and again? Sapphire, this group of flies raised, are all as lowly and disgusting as maggots. List stole the kingdom's gray iron dragon and light green sapphire dragon. Andre, this little bastard, actually betrayed me and ran away on the mountain copper dragon. He suddenly smashed the table with his fist. He gritted his teeth and cursed, unforgivable, all unforgivable. Adonis, you need to calm down. Anger is of no use. The queen looked at the broken pieces on the ground and worriedly supported Adonis. Adonis pushed the queen away. Don't bother me. What does a woman know? The queen frowned and did not say anything. Adonis continued to roar, someone convey my order. Immediately dispatch the dragon knight of the kingdom and kill all the flies, Sapphire, and that crippled sapphire dragon. Kill it for me. The knight guarding the palace looked at each other at a loss. It was the queen who stood up. Adonis, you should wake up. She then waved her hand and motioned for the knight to leave first. She wanted to speak to the king alone. When the knight had left, the queen said, do you want to trigger another dragon-slaying war? Who can do anything to my Eagle Kingdom after killing the sapphire dragon? Can't you see the intention behind the sapphire families continuing to launch the expansion order? It is List who is secretly supporting them. Think about his invisible dragon, the light green sapphire dragon, the gray iron dragon that once belonged to us, and that fire dragon as well as the bone dragon in the intelligence, and the magic shooter riding a unicorn. Every time the queen mentioned the name of a dragon, Adonis grew weaker. By the time he mentioned the unicorn, he had already collapsed on the chair. Tiffany, my wife, tell me what I should do now. The kingdom is in a precarious situation. What you need to do is to maintain the current situation, train new dragon knight, conquer new dragons, and let the kingdom survive this crisis. Do you know how difficult this is? First, Karl Law died in battle, then the light green sapphire dragon was lost, then Lure died in battle and the gray iron dragon was lost. The Blast Furnace Castle and the Iron and Steel Ridge have long lost their ambitions. In the face of the aggressive Fire Kingdom, they are only blindly pleasing, hoping to coexist peacefully. Adonis wanted to laugh as he said, they are too naive. From List's attitude towards my Eagle Kingdom, we can see that he is an ambitious person, a very ambitious person. He has the invisible dragon and has nothing to fear. Now he has caught the Eagle Kingdom and bitten them. Sooner or later, he will bite the Blast Furnace Castle and the Iron and Steel Ridge to death. Then we will compromise, make a gesture for them to see, and let them understand List's ambition, Queen Tiffany said calmly. Compromise? Yes, all forces that are not the core interests of the Moonlight Silver family and the White Iron family can be abandoned. Those nobles have been under the protection of the royal family for many years, but have not contributed anything. It is better to throw them to the Fire Kingdom. The low-level knight is not important, the important thing is the dragon. Do you really think this is feasible? Whether it is feasible or not, we can give it a try. Otherwise, what else can we do? The Blast Furnace Castle and the Iron and Steel Ridge refuse to join forces to obliterate the Fire Kingdom. We have no hope of winning the dragon-slaying war alone, we can only protect ourselves. Sooner or later, these two kingdoms will see clearly the true face of List's ambition. Adonis was silent for a long time. In that case, I will let the ministers of the kingdom enter the palace and discuss in detail. List did not know what the Eagle royal family's reaction was. Riding on the invisible dragon Bard, List scouted the battlefield and watched batches after batches of knights, serfs, elves, food, minerals and other resources being packed and transported away. List smiled like a 200-pound fatty. I thought that trade smuggling was the most profitable. Then I thought that gifts from friends were the most profitable. But neither is more profitable than waging war. Chapter 959. The Great Dragon is Dead is stuck. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 960. The war, which lasted more than a month, ended before the arrival of winter. Seeing orders of chivalry evacuate the Eagle Kingdom with the plentiful spoils of war, List relaxed a bit and left with his dragon regiment. All the spoils of war were distributed on the Iron Hoof Island. According to the distribution principle, mineral resources and the like were directly handed over to the Sapphire family for distribution. List did not ask about it. He already had the Dragon Pit mine and the Jade Mountain vein, so he did not care about the looted resources. The migrating serfs and the seized food were all enjoyed by the Flame family alone. Therefore, every batch that arrived was quickly sent to the Magic Gate of the Spirit Island and then transported to the Flame Island. The local officials would quickly arrange for the serfs to live and work together with the Flame family and the Moonkiller family. Since neither side understood the other's language, a lot of unnecessary trouble was avoided and they could just immerse themselves in work. The captured knight on the battlefield would be distributed according to the knight's wishes. Those who wanted to pay the ransom in exchange for freedom would be temporarily imprisoned on the Iron Hoof Island. Those who did not want to pay the ransom would simply surrender and be sent to the Flame Island to be incorporated. Their families and sprites could also be brought over. List promised the knight through the officials that the knight did not need to hand over their wealth as long as they worked for the Flame Kingdom. Before the founding of the kingdom, their sprites would have to serve the Flame Island. According to the degree of their service contribution, they could exchange for military merits and obtain titles of nobility. After the founding of the kingdom, they would be granted land according to their military merits. List told all the knight that the kingdom would be founded within 3 years. The knight was reluctant to pay the ransom before surrendering. Now, not only could they keep their sprites, but they could also continue to be noble knights, so why not? The ransom of the knight who refuses to surrender will be collected and distributed by the Sapphire family. Of course, if it involves nobles above the rank of count, I will have to personally arrange it. List had already explained that ordinary knight, knight lord, and baron viscount could not be squeezed out too much ransom. However, nobles like counts and marquises could squeeze out lesser sprites and greater sprites. Although List no longer cared about the sprite worm, he was still reluctant to part with the lesser sprite and the greater sprite. This time they captured 2 marquises and as many as 11 earls. Under the attack of the Sapphire Dragon, these nobles were no different from ordinary knight. After riding the dragon back to Iron Shoe City, List was enjoying a massage from a maid in the study of the castle. Has the night count been calculated? He asked Gort, who came to report the distribution of the spoils of war. Thanks to His Royal Highness's grace, we've had a great harvest this time. We've recruited a total of 4,672 Earth Knights and more than 7,600 trainee knights. Gort's face was flushed red. His strength was weak and his noble rank was also very low. But now he was one of the first 2 elders of the Fire Kingdom. He and Marcus did not have the qualifications to become greater aristocrats. The highest noble rank was at most a viscount because a count needed to become a sky knight. But even though he only had the title of baron, he still enjoyed tremendous power, often managing the territory on behalf of List. Only 7,600 trainee knights? List frowned. Well, Your Royal Highness, as you know, there are not many Earth Knights who can afford to raise trainee knights as retainers. Most of the retainers are ordinary people. These retainers are counted as serfs. Just like List, he was just a trainee knight. Although he was conferred the title of baron, his retainers were only 4 ordinary people. Many Earth Knights did not even recruit retainers. If they recruited retainers, they would have to provide food and drink. Many Earth Knights could not even feed themselves, let alone raise retainers. Marcus was a good example. He was an elite Earth Knight, but he did not have a single retainer. He raised his own horse, carried his own spear, and cleaned his own armor. List nodded slightly and asked, "Have these Earth Knights and trainee knights been sent to Flame Island?" Yes, every time a batch of knight is sent, after obtaining the knight's willingness to surrender, they are sent to Flame Island for reorganization. From the message sent by the magic platform there were some twists and turns. But with His Excellency Achilles in Reed City, those knights do not dare to make any trouble. Although Achi was a pure little siren who was favored by the unicorn. However, her worldview was quite different from that of humans, and with the bad teachings of List she did not have too many taboos about killing people. Perhaps to her, killing people was like killing sea monsters that were harmful to her when she lived in the sea. So when List entrusted her to guard the magic sweeping reed gate and told her to kill anyone who rebelled, she did it without any room for negotiation. She did not have a benevolent personality. Whether she was pure or not had nothing to do with the killing itself. It was a portrayal of the desire in the heart. Killing with desire and profit was definitely not pure, but killing chickens and dogs for meat was just a normal behavior in life, and it did not mean that it was impure. Therefore, Achi could ride the unicorn and casually kill the knight who caused the disturbance. With the powerful symbolism of the unicorn, she naturally stood on the moral high ground when she killed people. The humans close to the unicorn must be the embodiment of virtue. Her Highness the magic shooter rode the unicorn, the knight who was killed by her must be a bad guy. Moreover, in the world of the knight system, strength was respected. Was it a big deal for a dragon knight or magic shooter to kill people? Even if a few great nobles were destroyed, no one would dare to talk behind their backs. After all, the dragon-raising family was the big player. After asking the Earth Knight and the trainee knight, List asked new questions. Advisor Gort, how many Sky Knights are there? There are 57 Viscounts who chose to surrender, 2 of them are Sacred Swordsmen, 21 are ordinary Sky Knights, and the rest are just elite Earth Knights. There are 45 Viscounts who refused the title and chose to pay the ransom, all of which have been handed over to the Sapphire family for distribution. How did the 11 counts choose? Your Highness, they have not been summoned by you, so they have not responded yet. At present, only 3 counts have chosen to pay the ransom. That is to say, there are still 8 counts who may surrender. How strong are they? 4 ordinary Sky Knights, 3 Sacred Swordsman Sky Knights, and 1 perfect Sky Knight. Well, a perfect Sky Knight, that's interesting. List was very interested in this count. There were many battles during the pioneering of Flame Island. Fighting against the stubborn Moonkiller tribe and the ferocious world of Warcraft required a powerful knight as a safeguard. List couldn't handle all the troubles. He was the future king and couldn't work everywhere. Suppressing the idea of immediately summoning this count, he continued to ask, there are also 2 marquises, what attitudes have they revealed? Well, let's talk about the Marquis of Wild Wave first. The Marquis of Wild Wave, D. Maria Yuwashi, was tragically captured by List for the 2nd time. His territory happened to belong to the rich coastal hinterland of the Eagle Kingdom, and there was a large river for shipping supplies, so it became the first place to be attacked. The strong walls of the great River Heart Castle could not stop the Sapphire Dragon. Under the Sapphire Dragon's dive, half of the wall collapsed. Then a white flag was hung at the top of the wall, and the Marquis of Wild Wave wisely chose to surrender. Gort smiled, Your Highness, the Marquis of Wild Wave is not imprisoned, and he has been acting as Your Highness follower everywhere. He has promoted Your Highness glory among the captured nobles, and recruited these Viscounts and Counts for Your Highness. Another Marquis originally refused to surrender, but these days he has been persuaded by the Marquis of Wild Wave. Chapter 961. Other than the Marquis of Wild Tao, there was another Marquis captured, the Marquis of Chongshan, Elton Golden Chrysanthemum Metal. The Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family was an old Marquis family, and its territory was adjacent to the Marquis of Wild Tao's. However, compared to the Marquis of Wild Tao's domain knight strength, the 40-year-old Marquis of Chongshan only had the strength of a blade master. The Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family was derived from a potion flower, the metal chrysanthemum. The family's emblem was a circular metal in the shape of a chrysanthemum. Not only was Marquis Elton captured, but almost all of the territorial knight class was captured. At that time he summoned all of his followers to his Golden Chrysanthemum Castle, ready to defend the castle until the expansion order ended. Therefore, after Sapphire broke through the castle, none of the noble knight escaped. His territory alone contributed 4 earls, 12 viscounts, and a large number of knight. Your Highness, Elton doesn't have much choice. Most of his family's wealth has been plundered by the orders of chivalry. There is no way to pay the ransom for him and his followers. The speaker was Marquis of Wild Tao, D. Maria Yuwashi. In the study of Oxhoof Castle, the first person List summoned was Marquis of Wild Tao. As an old acquaintance and a follower, Marquis of Wild Tao enjoyed the treatment of freedom. The two sipped tea across the desk. The atmosphere was very friendly. Marquis of Wild Tao had lived on Black Horse Island for a long time and fell in love with green tea. Since then he and the Flame Territory had been secretly smuggling sea salt, glass, white paper and other goods. The Yuwashi family had long been at odds with the Eagle Kingdom. It was normal for them to sway to the Flame Kingdom. Marquis de Maria, if the surrender is successful, what kind of treatment do you think the Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family deserves? List asked casually. De Maria smiled. Your Highness, there is actually a very good way to quickly subdue the Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family. Well, tell me about it. Elton has a younger brother called Elroy. He is only a Viscount, only 30 years old, but he is already an old blade master, not far from completion. It is only because of Elton's suppression that he has been unable to be promoted to Earl. Elton acts absurdly while Elroy acts calmly. At this point, Di Maria's meaning was self-evident. Elton and Elroy were both sword saints, but it was obvious that Elroy was more talented and had a more mature personality. He was more suited to be the family head and inherit the Marquis position. List could use this as an excuse to promote Elroy to the position of Marquis. Elroy would definitely be grateful to List and control the Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family well. However, List had no intention of doing so. He smiled faintly. The Yuhua stone family can be preserved, but the Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family cannot be preserved. As long as Elton is willing to surrender, I can keep his Marquis title after the founding of the nation. But his followers will form new families on their own, and so will Elroy. Your Highness, what do you mean? For a moment, Di Maria did not understand List's intentions. The Flame Kingdom is a new country. The old powers need to be destroyed. This is not to prevent the clans from getting stronger, but to create more clans to assist me in ruling the Flame Islands. I understand, Your Highness. Di Maria understood immediately. Indeed, the new kingdom needs too many nobles and knight. Actually, coming to this land, even if Your Highness does not break up the clans, the powerful nobles and knight will leave on their own. Your Highness, the Yuhua Stone family is also willing to break up. I will dismiss my knight followers one by one, including my nephew Deborah Yuhua Stone. Since we have come to the new kingdom, I hope that the Yuhua Stone family can also be reborn on this land and completely integrate into the Flame Kingdom. List smiled slightly and nodded. You are a reasonable noble. Don't worry. Follow me and the Yuhua Stone family will only continue to grow and not decline. The population of the territory is not large, but there will be endless wars in the future. Enough people will be plundered to make up for the losses of the large clans. When he summoned the second Marquis, Elton Golden Chrysanthemum Metal, Di Maria did not leave. He had already received List's approval and became the knight's assistant. Elton, you and I have known each other for a long time. I have already clearly told you His Highness' intentions. Even if you do not break up, you will not have the ransom to redeem your followers. You can also see the growth of the Flame Kingdom and the decline of the Eagle Kingdom. I hope you can think clearly about your choice. After listening to Di Maria's words, Elton glanced at List, whose face was expressionless. He only allowed Di Maria to summon him, and did not receive any friendly messages. With List's status, he did not need to smile at any nobles. They were all prisoners of war at his disposal, pay the ransom and leave or surrender and pledge loyalty. There were no other paths. If not for the fact that he was a great noble, he might not even see List's face. But, if I break up the family's followers, how will the Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family develop? For 3 years they will serve the kingdom and work the land for His Highness. After 3 years they will be infeft. The Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family can naturally rely on the infeft territory to rise again. Without a knight, how can they rise? Di Maria said. After 3 years, there will definitely be a large number of knight who cannot be infeft. You can naturally recruit these knight to serve your family. Then what about my elves? The elves are still yours, but they need to serve for 3 years. Either you pay the price of a few big elves, return to your territory in the Eagle Kingdom and continue to be free. Of course, if your territory is rich, you can also help pay the ransom for followers who are willing to go back. His Highness has always been tolerant of nobles and respects your wishes. Elton might have mediocre talent and acted preposterously, but he was, after all, born into a great noble family. Calculating for benefits was instinctive. After thinking for a moment, he nodded calmly. In that case, I am willing to follow behind His Highness. The Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family originally wanted to serve His Highness. After the 2 marquises, List summoned 2 more nobles alone. One was a Sky Knight with the title of Earl at the level of perfection, Geoffrey Furonqui. He promised to be at least a Marquis title after the founding of the kingdom, and Geoffrey happily followed. The other was Elroy Golden Chrysanthemum Metal, a 30-year-old sword saint with good talent and imminent perfection. Without any need for List to say more, he immediately expressed his willingness to follow. After that, in the banquet, List invited all the 7 earls who had not yet chosen to pay the ransom to the banquet, and personally called for them to surrender. In the midst of hesitation, 6 earls finally announced their willingness to follow. Only 1 earl of the normal level Sky Knight, after thinking for a long time, still decided to pay the ransom. At this point, leaving aside the title, This time, List directly subdued a domain knight, a sky knight at the level of perfection, 5 sky knights at the level of sword saint, and 25 sky knights at the level of ordinary sky knights. There were also more than 800 elite earth knights, more than 3,800 ordinary earth knights, and more than 7,600 trainee knight. List did not confiscate the sprites of these knights, but only required them to serve for 3 years. The number of sprites he could really get was provided by the 4 earls who had paid the ransom, a total of 7 sprites. According to the requirements, at least 3 of them were potion and grain sprites. However, compared to the high-level manpower and material resources of the knight and sprites, his biggest gain was the serfs at the bottom. More than 500,000 serfs, civilians and craftsmen were crazily transported to Flame Island. What the new Flame Kingdom needed the most was population replenishment. Sooner or later, everything could be obtained by plowing the land. As night fell, List was looking at the spoils of war in the study. He said to himself regretfully, "The only thing that is a little disharmonious is that these knight and serfs are all from the Eagle Kingdom. If only I could rob the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom a few times to dilute it." Chapter 962. After the night incorporation in Oxhoof City, List did not stay long and hurriedly left Oxhoof Castle. First, he went to Black Horse Island and left the Grey Iron Dragon Orn there to continue suppressing the Flame territory. He also let the Pea Sprite Ash touch its scales to evolve. Then he returned to Flame Island. At this moment, Reed City could be said to be extremely crowded, and the air was filled with a foul stench. More than 500,000 serfs and knights were transferred here. Even though Reed Avenue had been repaired, it was still difficult to transport all the serfs out in a hurry. However, they just had to get through this period of chaos. In addition to the 5 major cities of Reed City, Fire City, Jade City, Dragon Valley City, and Estuary City, Flame Island had also opened up hundreds of settlements along the Whirlpool River Basin and around several avenues. Nearly 1.5 million Killer Moon serfs, in addition to cutting down the forest, were plowing the land and building wooden houses. A large number of wooden houses stood in the settlements, but they had always been empty and were still being built. Houses made of cement and brick were still high-end buildings and could not be popularized for serfs to live in for the time being. Wooden houses were the best choice and were also convenient to build. Because List was very ambitious, regardless of whether there were people or not, he built a lot of ghost cities first. Since there were not enough seeds and many Killer Moon people could not plant fields, they simply built houses and tried to train them as construction workers to accumulate strength for the future infrastructure projects of the Flame Kingdom. However, in the chaos of Reed City, a lively open-air celebration banquet was about to be held. It had nothing to do with the captured knight, but List's followers who had bravely won military exploits in the large-scale conferring war. Just this order of expansion alone had conferred more than 300 Lord Knight titles. These new nobles left gratefully without eating a bite of the food at the banquet. Today, basically 1 out of every 8 Earth Knights on Flame Island was a Lord Knight. The promotion rate was cheap. In the fief of other nobles, it was very difficult for an Earth Knight to be promoted to a Lord Knight. Here, one could be promoted by casually farming in World of Warcraft. The Baron has conferred more than 50 titles. The Knight of Flower Town and Black Horse Island have basically received the title of Baron. Baron Alvin Eagle's word, you have been forging magic equipment for the territory day and night. Although you have not set foot on the battlefield, you have made great contributions. Today I have decided to confer you the title of Viscount. Before the banquet, List read out the promotion list that had been written long ago. The Iron Knight, who had once fallen into such dire straits that his family's inherited weapon, the Ice Dragon slaying sword, was snatched away and he himself was thrown into prison, was so moved that 2 streams of tears rolled down his face. Your Highness, I, Arwen, am willing to serve your Highness for generations to come. Holding the knight's long sword, List tapped each of Arwen's shoulders. Then servants brought in noble costumes, badges and civilized sticks. After a set of procedures, Alvin stepped back. List read from the list, Marcus Wheel, step forward. Marcus suddenly trembled as he walked in front of List and knelt on one knee. Your Highness. Marcus Baron Wheel, since the time of Flower Town, you have been training in orders of chivalry for my territory. You have worked day and night, trembling with fear, not daring to relax. You have made great contributions. In orders of expansion, you have taken the lead and beheaded many enemy knights. You have made great contributions. Today I have decided to confer you the title of Viscount. Your Highness, I, Marcus, am willing to fight for your highness and serve the Flame family for generations to come. Marcus took a deep breath and swore in the tone of a fanatic. The elite Earth Knight who first followed List had his dreams realized early on. Now, every step forward was a huge dreamlike development for him. Although he knew in his heart that Viscount was basically his pinnacle title. Without becoming a Sky Knight, he could not be conferred the title of Count. This was the rule of the Knight system. But he still had a son and he would do his best to cultivate his son. As long as he firmly followed behind his highness, the title of Count was definitely not a chasm. Handing Marcus the costume badge and cane, List smiled slightly. Teacher Marcus, it is time to give your family a new surname. Yes, your highness. Marcus bowed and retreated. At this time List continued to read, Gort Baron Mast. Subsequently, several officials such as Gort and Charles as well as several elite Earth Knights with veteran status, were conferred the title of Viscount one after another. Everyone expressed a lot of grateful declarations after the conferment. And this was not the end. At the final climax of the conferment ceremony, List was still reading, Paris, step forward. Your Highness. The light magic great swordsman Paris knelt on one knee. Baron Paris, you have been my guard since the Flower Town era. During the Black Horse Island era, you served as the territory patrol leader and participated in the construction of the Flame Island territory. During the war you have charged into the enemy lines and reaped great rewards. You have personally captured the Sky Knight. Your outstanding military service is outstanding. Today I have decided to confer you the title of Count. She was a veteran of the Flower Town era and the first person to be conferred the title of Count. As a light magic great swordsman, her strength was comparable to that of a sacred swordsman, and she was enough to assume the title of Count. Paris solemnly replied, Your Highness, glory favors you. Paris is willing to charge into the enemy lines for your highness and serve the Flame family for generations to come. The knight's sword pointed at Paris's shoulder. List nodded and said, You are the first countess of the territory. You should set an example for all the female knight in the territory. I hope you can take on more important responsibilities in the future. Yes, your highness. After Paris withdrew, the conferment ceremony was still not over. At this time, the gazes of all the aristocrats were cast on another female figure that was slowly walking forward, Emily. This seemingly young girl had strength that made everyone jealous, amazed and awed. She had also obtained the ultimate dream of a knight. Dragon riding. Many aristocrats of the territory already knew that Emily, the most terrifying talent at His Highness' side, had already begun to make contact with the light green gem dragon, preparing to ride the dragon. The Fire Kingdom could give birth to a second dragon knight at any time. Once it succeeded, she would be the only female dragon knight in the entire history of the legendary continent. Your Highness. Emily knelt on one knee. I'm very pleased. I've seen your growth bit by bit. In the past, when a thin and weak little girl pledged loyalty to me in a childish tone, who would have thought that one day you would grow to such heights? And all of this happened in just 3 or 4 years. List didn't use official lines like before. He expressed his admiration for Emily without any scruples. This girl never let him down. Baron Emily, when you were managing the giant elephant orders of chivalry, you worked hard and made great contributions. In the war to open up the order of chivalry, you were even more meritorious. Today I have decided to confer you the title of Earl. Your Highness, Emily is willing to be the spear and sword of your highness. After the process was completed, List said again, You are still young. The title of Earl is not your final destination. Continue to work hard. As you wish, your highness. Looking at the followers who were conferred titles and those who were not, List smiled and said, Those who are not conferred titles continue to work hard. Those who are conferred titles continue to work even harder. Within 3 years the Fire Kingdom will be established. When the kingdom is established, you will be conferred lands according to your titles. I hope that by then countless aristocrats will be born from you. Your highness, please. At this point, the conferment ceremony ended, and the banquet started immediately. Please remember the original domain name of this book. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 963. Early the next morning, after List finished his morning training, he held another high-level noble meeting. Not only the Knight of the Flame Territory, but also the noble knight who had just been captured from the Eagle Kingdom, and 2 mages attended the meeting. The knight and mages were all seated at the conference table. Butler Carter, together with a few servants, poured a cup of fragrant milk in front of every knight and sorcerer with a long spout iron kettle. List picked up the cup and tasted it gracefully. This milk tea is different. Di Maria, you may not know since you just arrived. This is the milk produced by the dragon-type cow, Banpo cow. Long-term drinking has great benefits for training. The ranch is expanding the scale of Banpo cow. In the future, all the knight of the kingdom, especially the young knight, will be able to drink Banpo cow's milk. Di Maria picked up the cup, tasted it deeply and could not help but praise. It's indeed the milk produced by the cow. The effect can't be felt yet, but the taste is fragrant. It's better than any milk I've ever drunk. It's indeed delicious. The taste is delicate and soft. It's enough to drink Banpo cow's milk every day. Your Highness, I didn't expect to be able to drink the milk of a dragon-type cow one day. The new nobles were full of admiration. Whether they liked it or not, it was right to brag. In fact, Banpo cow's milk was indeed worth bragging about. Among the dragon-type creatures, dragon-type wild beasts were the lowest level, but they were also the rarest. According to List and Achi's research speculation, the conditions to infect dragon-type wild beasts were very harsh. It had to be a young dragon to infect wild beasts, and the bloodline infection power would not cause the beast to explode. Adult dragons basically did not have the possibility of infecting dragon-type wild beasts. The bloodline infection power was very violent, and non-warcraft could not withstand it. Therefore, dragon-type wild beasts had always been rare. The Sapphire family had raised the Sapphire dragon for 100 or 200 years. There was only a group of blue blood horses that were unknown if they were infected by the Sapphire dragon. The royal families of the three kingdoms all had some dragon beasts that were infected by adult dragons. Young dragons and dragon-type wild beasts were almost unheard of. List controlled 3 types of dragon beasts: black blood horse, Banpo cattle and estuary pig. He still had 2 young dragons, the fire dragon Leo and the invisible dragon Bard. In the future he would continue to explore the infectious power of their bloodline and infect more dragon-type beasts. After drinking the milk tea, the meeting entered the main topic. List was not a fan of long-winded arguments and he always got straight to the point. The influx of knight and civilians has injected new blood into the development of Blazing Island. Population is always the source of a country's development. But we also need to see the current chaos in the territory. After a pause he continued, the management work is very difficult, but I believe that all of you can handle it well. In 1 month I need to see all the new and old people living and working in peace and contentment. As for the new knight, you must also adapt to your new identity within this month and coordinate your work direction. As you wish, Your Highness. The followers responded in unison. List nodded and said, I don't often stay in Firewood Castle. My father, Marquis Oxtail, will be staying in Firewood Castle for a long time. When I leave, he will be in charge of the development of the territory. Lee William took over List's topic and said, Everyone, let us work hard for the establishment of the Fire Kingdom. As the father of the Dragon Knight and the father of the future king, he was in charge of the development of the territory. The knight class would not have any objections. Everyone nodded in acknowledgement. List announced the second personnel decision. The development of the kingdom is huge, and the transportation is not convenient. In order to better assist Marquis Oxtail in his management work, I will directly set up a development committee as a temporary cabinet before the establishment of the Fire Kingdom. Every royal family would set up a cabinet, and the nobles would enter the palace as ministers to coordinate the affairs of the kingdom. Although the Fire Kingdom had not been established yet, it was only a matter of time. Therefore it was necessary to set up a temporary cabinet. In the current situation where there was no land to enjoy, the noble knight who participated in the meeting all looked at List with hope, hoping that he could be selected as a member of the development committee. List's gaze swept over the many noble knight who were eager to try. He directly announced, Marquis Oxtail will be the chairman, D. Maria Uwashi will be the vice-chairman, Gort, Marcus, Elton Golden Chrysanthemum, Jeffrey Furonqui, Duarte Red Apricot, Emily, and Paris will be the committee members. Chris and Kenley will be the special committee members to coordinate the Guild of Magic's participation in the development of the territory. When the results came out, some were pleasantly surprised, some were disappointed, but no one raised any objections. It was reasonable for Marquis Oxtail to be the chairman. D. Maria, who had just surrendered, immediately became the vice-chairman. This was completely List's way of thanking him for his performance in persuading List to surrender. Moreover, D. Maria was a domain knight and had been a marquis for many years. His original fief was also very rich, and his management work was trustworthy. Gort and Marcus had low ranks and low strength, but they were List's confidants. During the Flower Town era, they had served as List's teachers, and their relationship was not ordinary. Geoffrey had also just surrendered. He was a domain knight at the perfection level in his prime, and had a heart to improve. List was looking forward to his performance. Duarte was a count who had already surrendered during the Black Horse Island era, so it was reasonable for him to be valued. There was no need to talk about Emily, as she was the only candidate for the Dragon Knight plan. There was also no need to talk about Paris, as many people in the territory were rumored to be the Lord's secret lover. Only Elton, who had been strongly advocated by the two marquises during the discussion between List, Lee William and Di Maria last night. List himself looked down on this kind of good-for-nothing who liked to suppress his brothers. He was born as a second son, and he always felt that the noble families were too harsh on the second sons. China traditionally had the concept of more children bringing more blessings, but the nobles here only needed one child. If they had more, there would not be enough resources to nurture them, so they could only be kicked out of the family and let the second son fight on his own. Of course, the greater the noble, the less harsh the concept of second sons. After all, the family was rich and they did not mind nurturing a few more children. Elton was born a great noble, but he treated his more talented younger brother harshly. It was clear that his character was poor. However, Lee William and Di Maria believed that the territory was in chaos at this stage, and that it was key to stabilize the knight hierarchy as soon as possible. And if a noble with a high rank was put in an important position, the knight hierarchy would quickly feel at ease. List did not worry too much about such things and readily went with the flow. Thus, Elton joined the development committee. As for the two great magicians, Chris and Kenley, they served as special committee members to coordinate the Guild of Magic. They themselves did not participate in the construction of the territory, but focused on the research work of the Guild of Magic, as an existence similar to the Academy of Sciences. Everyone, the important task of developing Flame Island will be handed over to you. As you wish, Your Highness. At the end of the meeting, the development committee announced to the public, and the significance of the temporary cabinet quickly became apparent. All official work was no longer crowded on List's desk. Therefore he took some time, brought a chi, and quickly headed to the volcano of Doomsday. Through the deal of 20 bottles of Red Dragon water, Leo had already agreed to cause an eruption at the volcano of Doomsday. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.